Chapter 11:19. It was during this pause that an E-Prefecture's consecrator Li caught up with an unsightly expression leading a group of defeated soldiers. With a wave of his hand, the remaining dozen or so an E-Prefecture's people surrounded Arbor. But everyone's faces were a bit pale as they looked at Arbor with trepidation. "Stinky girl! I really underestimated you!" Consecrator Li shouted angrily, giving Gong Yang a meaningful look. Gong Yang nodded in understanding and secretly slid her feet twice. She suddenly reached out to grab Arbor's shoulder, a vicious glint flashing through her eyes. She intended to break Arbor's arm. Chirp! A white fluffy figure shot over like an arrow, angrily slapping Gong Yang's face with its little claws. With a pounce, Gong Yang screamed and raised his hand to cover his face. Fresh blood slid down from between his fingers. The little fat squirrel's movements were too fast. In just a breath's time, it succeeded in its surprise attack and clawed Gong Yang's eye blind. Consecrator Li cursed "useless thing" in his heart and directly rushed towards Arbor. He sneered and said, "Stinky girl, if you have the guts, try throwing another core-ravaging thunder." He wasn't a fool. He naturally knew that a great killing weapon like the core-ravaging thunder was an extremely rare item even in a concealed weapon aristocratic family. Confirming that Arbor couldn't possibly have a second core-ravaging thunder, Consecrator Li fearlessly struck out two palms in Arbor's direction, vigorous mystic energy suddenly encircling her. Gong Yang covered his face with one hand and screamed with a distorted expression, "Consecrator Li, quickly catch this stinky girl." Once Consecrator Li turned this stinky girl into a cultivation vessel, he would definitely make this girl beg for death in order to avenge the enmity of losing an eye today. This hateful girl actually dared to let a weak little mystic beast from God knows where scratch his eye blind. Gong Yang was so angry that he couldn't restrain himself. His entire body trembled in anger on the spot. Consecrator Li sneered. This old man's movements weren't slow. While using mystic energy to lock Arbor in place, he had already flashed in front of her and was about to grab her delicate little neck in the next second. Arbor suddenly raised his small hand. Consecrator Li was shocked, and he flew back like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Gong Yang, who was covering his eyes with one hand, also cried out in horror and suddenly retreated. The dozen or so people from the Ani prefecture who had encircled Xiao Mu on the outside also stumbled back a dozen or so steps, glaring at her in terror. Arbor looked at the crowd coldly and quietly put down his little hand. Consecrator Li saw that she didn't move for a long time and couldn't help but cry out in anger. This damned brat dared to trick him. The most hateful thing was that there were so many of them, but she actually succeeded in tricking them. How infuriating! Consecrator Li had a fierce look on his face. He jumped up and swept his strong old leg towards Arbor's feet. There was anger on his face. The dozen or so an E-Prefecture's disciples once again surrounded him like wolves and tigers. Just at this time, Arbor once again raised her small hand and made a small action of throwing a core-ravaging thunder. Consecrator Li was greatly alarmed. He quickly rolled on the ground like a gourd and rolled to the side. He hurriedly opened his defensive barrier and prepared for a full defense. Those dozen or so an E-Prefecture's disciples were so scared that their faces were pale. They rolled on the ground and loudly gasped for breath. They were so scared that they retreated again. However, after half a day, there was still no movement. Consecrator Li and the others were dumbfounded as they looked at the little girl who had played them for a fool. Chapter 11:20. Damn it! Pundit Li's face was already contorted. He was extremely furious. Being toyed with by this wretched girl time and time again, he only felt that his old face was burning hot and he was abnormally embarrassed. Gong Yang covered one of his eyes at the side and screamed urgently, "Pundit! Don't fall for her trick. This wretched girl is only scaring us. She definitely doesn't have a large firearm like the core-ravaging thunder on her. She doesn't have it. Don't hesitate, quickly catch her. Don't let her escape." Gong Yang urged from the side, "Don't forget that she's the only one who knows the whereabouts of the holy water. And the Tianji treasure map on her. Xiao Mu blinked, unable to understand why these people kept crowding around her. Logically speaking, they wanted that round egg, and she had already given it to them, but they were still surrounding her, not knowing what they wanted to do. So annoying that it was time for her to cultivate. It was better to kill all these people who were hindering her from cultivating. Otherwise, they would always be buzzing around her like dead flies. Arbor separated her palms, and a wave of spirit energy appeared on her body. Suddenly, Pundit Lee and the rest were stunned to find that the soil on the ground rolled up the leaves, like a wriggling dragon. An earth-shattering layer of soil suddenly rose up from the ground, turning over and smashing down on everyone. Earth Spirit! Pundit Lee was instantly stunned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell at a glance that Arbor was using one of the 5 spirits, the Earth Spirit. This wretched girl had already comprehended the Earth Spirit at such a young age. Comprehending the Earth Spirit in a place like the lower star domain? Or could it be that she wasn't from the lower star domain at all? Pundit Lee jumped in fright, and hurriedly retreated, trying to escape from this earth-shattering wall with lightning speed. Boom! The tumbling earth wall came crashing down, instantly drowning the dozen of an prefecture's disciples who had lost their arms and legs and looked like arrows at the end of their flight. Gong Yang saw that the situation was not good, and turned to escape. Suddenly, something round rolled all the way to his feet. Gong Yang lowered his head to look, and his eyes suddenly bulged. He let out a miserable cry, and before he could escape, he was sent flying by a huge explosive force. This time, he happened to be in the center of the explosion of the core-ravaging thunder. How could he survive? His entire body was flung out and ruthlessly smashed into a broken old tree before tumbling to the ground with a boom. His upper body fell to the ground like a puppet, and he couldn't even close his eyes before he died. It was as if he was in complete disbelief that Xiaomu, this little fellow, would actually carry a second core-ravaging thunder on her and casually throw it away. When Consecrator Li broke through the soil layer and jumped out with a loud shout, he saw Gong Yang's tragic death before he died. His broken body was hanging on half of a withered tree. It was very scary. Consecrator Li's scalp went numb. He turned around and saw that he was the only one left in the huge Ani Prefecture team. This little girl's battle prowess could not be judged based on her current cultivation. High Official Li already had thoughts of retreating. Between treasures and his life, Consecrator Li still cherished his life. The core-ravaging thunder on the little girl was especially terrifying. Compared to what he had seen before, it was even more powerful. It could actually blast Gong Yang, a level 12 mystic cultivator, into smithereens in an instant. How dehumanizing was this? Chapter 11:21. He didn't know if there was a third core-ravaging thunder on this damned girl. He couldn't afford to gamble. After the earth layer was turned over, Mr. Li's body was already covered in blood and he couldn't fight anymore. Since he already had the intention to retreat, he made a prompt decision to fly backwards. But after running for a few steps, he saw a snow-white squirrel-like little beast squatting there, eyeing him covetously. Its pair of small eyes were staring at him just like that. Consecrator Li immediately flew into a rage. With a roar, he kicked over, "Get out of my way." Damn it, even a weak little beast could casually block his way now? It was simply seeking its own death. Mr. Li's face was ugly. He was sure that his kick would definitely send this weak beast flying into the sky. He didn't care whether it was dead or alive. Anyway, if it dared to block his way, he would kill it all. However, the flying into the sky that he expected didn't happen. On the contrary, he clearly heard the crisp sound of his leg bones breaking. He immediately wailed and cold sweat dripped down his head. That kick just now was as if he had kicked a piece of iron plate, causing his leg bones to fracture. Don't joke around. He was a level 1 spiritual master. For someone with his cultivation level, his whole body had been trained to the point where it was impregnable. Not to mention kicking such a weak little beast, even if he was hit by the core-ravaging thunder just now, it wouldn't be enough to make him so miserable. So to say that this little beast wasn't a weak beast. Could it be a spiritual beast? Or a divine beast? Consecrator Lee was flabbergasted as he stared at the little weak beast that was constantly stretching its body and suddenly grew to the size of a small hill in front of him. Dragging his broken old leg, he took a few steps back and swallowed his saliva in panic. Why did it turn out like this? What kind of monster was this? He had never seen a little squirrel that could grow to the size of a mountain. His eyes bulged and he subconsciously shrank back. When she turned her head, she saw the slender figure standing under the tree. Her evil guts welled up, and she pounced at Xiao Mu, her hands grabbing for Xiao Mu's slender neck. No, he must catch this damned girl in his hands to save his life. Bang! A white, furry tail suddenly covered the top of his head and swept over, instantly sending the old man, who was trying to grab Xiao Mu, flying. He crashed headfirst into a tree with a thud, and he tumbled to the ground with a cry of pain. The little white squirrel that had turned into the size of a small hill had a pair of small eyes that flashed with a cold light. It contained a deterrent force that Consecrator Lee could not understand. When he fell to the ground, he felt as if his internal organs had been flipped upside down by the tail. After enduring for 2 seconds, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with bits of his internal organs. With this spray, his aura became much more dispirited, and he fell to the ground on the verge of death, leaving only a pair of frightened eyes staring at the giant beast in front of him. He was scared. No, he regretted it. Let me go. Mr. Lee coughed heavily and turned to look at Arbor. He said word by word, "This old man can, cough, serve you as my master." However, Arbor didn't know what he was mumbling about and didn't give him any response. The little white squirrel saw that its little master's face was incomparably cold and knew that its master didn't want to let this damned old man live. Chapter 11:22. Since that was the case, then he would take care of the old man. His long tail immediately swept over again. Don't be fooled by the large, furry tail that looked very gentle and warm when it landed on Consecrated Lee's body. Its might was comparable to that of a giant pillar reaching the heavens. He was instantly smashed into minced meat, and his head was smashed into pieces and buried in the ground. Roar! After the hill-sized squirrel lord finished dealing with the old man, he suddenly roared toward the depths of the forest. The dense pressure spread out, causing the group of small beasts that were originally restless and uneasy in the entire forest, intending to run to the base to attack the humans, to be so scared that they covered their heads and scurried away. One after another, they pitifully retreated back to their own small territories. So terrifying. Even that boss in the forest didn't dare to make a sound at this time. This dense and terrifying aura was clearly on par with the aura when the Bloodfire Phoenix egg was born. Terrifying. The appearance of a holy beast Bloodfire Phoenix egg in the Mystic Beast Forest was already frightening enough. Why did such a big shot appear now? Do Heping, Mu Boming, and the others, who were desperately rushing toward this end of the forest, were shaken by the little squirrel's roar halfway and tumbled to the ground on the spot. The ground of the entire Mystic Beast Forest was faintly trembling. The members of the group rolled all over the ground. They struggled to get up in a fluster and looked for trees, boulders, and other things to hide behind in their fright. Fuck! What was going on? The 2 earth-shattering explosions earlier had caused them to look for cover everywhere like quails. Now, there was the roar of a giant beast. Can't you just let me travel happily? After waiting for a while and discovering that there was nothing out of the ordinary in their surroundings, Mu Boming and Do Heping walked out from behind a large tree with strange expressions. When they turned around, they saw Qin Guelu and the eldest young Sir leading a group of people from the Qin estate rushing over at a moderate speed. They didn't appear to be in a sorry state and seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll along the way, which made Family Head Mu and Family Head Do's teeth ache. So everyone is here. Qin Xian looked at the people from the Do and Mu clans with a grin. With a jade-like beauty and a distinguished and elegant demeanor, this eldest young master merely stood there and immediately caused Miss Zhilan of the Mu family to blush. Family Head Qin and young Master Qin don't seem to care much about the phoenix egg. Mu Boming tugged at the corner of his mouth with a fake smile. Upon seeing this, Qin Guelu chuckled and said, "It's not about caring or not. Although this phoenix egg is good, there is only one of it after all. Whether or not we can get it depends on fate. Let's just leave it to fate. Mu Boming's lips quivered, and then he laughed in mock embarrassment. Family head Qin is indeed open-minded. Family head, if you don't go over now, it'll be too late. Mu Zijuan reminded with a taut face. The red clouds in the sky that had been dyed red by the birth of the phoenix egg were slowly fading away. If he didn't rush over now, he wouldn't even be able to tell which direction the phoenix egg was in. Mu Boming hurriedly responded and nodded. Let's go. Thus, he no longer argued with the Qin family and hurriedly led the group in the direction of the phoenix egg's flash. The people from the Dou family naturally weren't willing to fall behind. Dou Heping cupped his hands at family head Qin before hastily leading the group in pursuit. The two groups traversed the great mystic beast forest in tandem as they chased after each other. Chapter 1123. The two teams traversed the great mystic beast forest one after the other in pursuit. After running for so long, they had truly exhausted some of their stamina, and some of the youths in the team with inferior cultivations had fallen behind. Qin Xian leisurely walked beside family head Qin, but a moment later, he asked with a smile, "Did you guys notice that the phoenix egg is currently moving forward?" After he mentioned it, everyone abruptly realized that the phoenix egg had shifted forward by at least several hundred meters from where they had seen it previously. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled as he lightly struck his palm with his fist. "Say, do you guys think that the phoenix egg has grown legs and is purposely avoiding us?" Everyone, Eldest young sir, your joke isn't funny at all. Yet Qin Guelu said with a smile, "Phoenix eggs are born with intelligence, so it's not impossible." Squeak squeak. Suddenly, a small mouse with sparse hair on its head popped out from the thicket, and its beady red eyes glanced at them. "Ah, a damned mouse." The startled Yang Fengyan's fingers moved slightly, and a burst of mystic energy pounced at that mouse. After a soft zing sound, the small mouse was struck by the mystic energy, and it rolled. With a kick of its hind legs, it fled through the thicket in terror. Qin Guelu creased his brows imperceptibly. Mu Zhilan suddenly burst out in laughter, and her tone was not without mockery as she said, "You can't even kill a mouse." Yang Fengyan's small face flushed red under her veil. How could she have known that this mouse was so strange? She had clearly sent out a burst of level 4 mystic energy earlier, but a mouse actually slipped away. Mu Boming waved his hand with a smile and said, "Zhilan, let's go." "Yes, family head." Mu Zhilan pursed her lips and revealed a mocking smile again. When she passed by eldest young Sir Qin, she even snuck a glance at him. However, she didn't expect to meet eldest young Sir's smiling gaze. This was great. Her maiden heart thumped wildly, and she hurriedly followed family head Mu. On the side, Mu Zijuan saw this, and a sneer surfaced in his mind, "Love-struck fool." "Father!" Suddenly, a voice called out. Dou Heping hurriedly turned his head and saw his daughter, Dou Fengqi, catching up from behind. "Phoenix Pool." "Father!" Dou Fengqi stomped her feet and ran forward with an aggrieved expression. "Why are all of you here?" "It's a long story. Let's talk as we walk." Seeing that Mu Boming and the others had already set off, Dou Heping hurriedly ran after them. At this time, the ground had returned to normal. However, just as the eldest young master had said, that hateful phoenix egg kept moving forward, as if it was deliberately avoiding everyone. "Father, what's going on? What was that red light?" "The bloodfire phoenix egg has descended. Now, all the powers have gathered here. Those who can come are all here. Don't worry about anything else." "What's going on with you? Aren't you training in the secret realm?" "Don't mention it, father." Dou Fengqi angrily stomped her feet. "I was forcefully sent out. It's that woman's doing." "Which woman? Who else could it be?" "The crown princess." "What?" Dou Heping actually paused in shock before quickly running again. "We'll talk about this later." Chapter 1124. The urgent matter at hand was to see what was going on with the phoenix egg. Behind Do Heping, a young lady who resembled Do Fengqi in appearance but looked slightly younger couldn't resist pursing her lips and saying with a smile, "So useless. We agreed on a month of training, but we were forcefully transported out in less than half a month." Do Fengyao, shut your mouth. Do Fengqi retorted with a cold expression, "If you went, you might end up worse than me." All right. When Do Heping saw that these two sisters had started dog-eat-dog again, he could only separate them with a headache. "Stop bickering, you two sisters. It's more important to take care of proper business right now." The group continued to run for a while as they spoke. The Do family and Mu family couldn't bear the enormous physical exhaustion, and more disciples fell behind. Do Heping and Mu Boming's expressions were slightly unsightly. In contrast, Qin Guilu looked nonchalant as he turned to the two of them and said with a smile, "Family head Mu, family head Do, leave it to fate, leave it to fate." "Pooh! Leave it to fate my ass." Do Heping and Mu Boming secretly cursed Qin Guilu, that old fox, in their hearts. "Look at that red light." Mu Zhilan suddenly raised her hand and pointed ahead. Everyone looked over and saw that the red light ahead had dimmed considerably, so faint that it was almost indistinguishable. Fuck, the phoenix egg couldn't have been picked up by someone, right? A Qin estate disciple realized the truth. Upon hearing this, Yang Fengyan immediately said indignantly, "Impossible. It takes some time for a phoenix egg to recognize a master. It hasn't even been an hour since the phoenix egg descended into the world. Even contracting the phoenix egg won't be that fast." Qin Guilu nodded, and his gaze flickered as he glanced at eldest young Sir Qin beside him. The latter pursed his lips at him disinterestedly. "Let's go over and take a look. That phoenix egg seems to have stopped." That's right. Although that red light in the forest had dimmed considerably, it finally stopped moving around crazily. Now that everyone had a clear target, they went over quickly. It didn't take long for them to find the source of the red light. Pushing aside the overgrown branches, they ran over to take a look. Everyone couldn't help but be startled. He saw a large piece of woodland, with only some debris and broken branches left. A deep pit was blasted in the middle, and the surrounding grass and trees were all razed to the ground. Thinking of the two huge tremors they heard before, everyone couldn't help but be speechless. After walking a little further, they saw a slender figure in plain clothes sitting with her back facing them. Looking at her back, she was actually a little girl. Everyone hurriedly quickened their pace and surrounded him, but they were also very careful to see if there were any traps under their feet. "It's you." Do Fengqi circled to the front and saw the young lady's face. She couldn't help but cry out in alarm with a face full of resentment. Qin Guilu was also taken aback, and he involuntarily cupped his hands toward the seated figure. "Miss Qiao." At this moment, Miss Qiao's body was covered in a faint red light, which was very dazzling. She was sitting in front of a group of people. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she didn't move at all. She didn't even bat an eyelid. Seeing this, Do Fengqi couldn't help but be furious. She rushed forward and pointed at Arbor, then said angrily, "All right? You threw us out of the mystic realm one by one. I thought you would be able to stay in there for a long time by yourself. I didn't expect you to come out as well. Is there any meaning in doing such a thankless task?" Fengqi. Second young Sir Do frowned slightly as he reprimanded. Chapter 1125. Second brother. Do Fengqi stomped her feet in anger. "It's all because of her that I—" "Shut up." Second young Sir Do glared impatiently at his younger sister. On the side, his younger sister, Do Fengyao, couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you grumbling about when your skills are inferior to others?" Do Fengyao. All right. Do Heping was about to be angered to death by these two sisters. They were still fighting like dogs in front of a group of outsiders, making the Do family a laughingstock for no reason. Mu Boming's eyes flickered, and he walked forward and cupped his hands. Miss Chiao, can you explain to us why you're covered in red light? Did you pick up a phoenix egg? Hand over the bloodfire phoenix egg. A trace of jealousy and hatred flitted through Yang Fengyan's eyes, and her eyes under the veil glared venomously at Arbor. She already knew that this crown princess who had parachuted into the Mo kingdom was the little maidservant who had previously stayed in their Qin estate and disfigured her face by whipping her. As a result, her face had yet to fully recover, so she could only wear a veil when she went out. She seemed to be called something like Mu Xiaobao. That lowly slut who hooked up with men all day long. Not only did she not seduce eldest cousin and second cousin, she even hooked up with the crown prince now. Simply abominable. Right, hand over the phoenix egg. The Qin estate's disciples also stared fervently at the red light on Arbor's body, and they involuntarily took a few steps forward. Withdraw. Eldest young Sir Qin swept a cold gaze over them, promptly sweeping away the impulsive emotions in their heads. Under the eldest young Sir's intimidating gaze, they shuddered and subconsciously retreated a few steps. It was only then that eldest young Sir Qin turned around and chuckled at the little stoic sitting cross-legged in front of everyone. He called out, "Xiao Bao, what are you doing sitting here by yourself?" Yang Fengyan clenched her fists and abruptly took a step forward, pulling out her sword to stab at Arbor. "Cousin, don't waste your breath on this woman. Just make her hand over the phoenix egg." The eldest young Sir nimbly grabbed her arm, a trace of fury flitting through his eyes. "Who told you to attack?" "Ah, cousin. Cousin, cousin." Yang Fengyan struggled with a pained expression on her face. Her wrist felt like it was about to break when he grabbed it. Seeing this, Mu Zhilan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Her fingertips moved stealthily and an attack talisman shot towards Arbor. Eldest young Sir Qin hadn't expected that Mu Zhilan would also suddenly make a move. Unable to stop her in time, the talisman flashed by at an extraordinarily fast speed. He watched as the attack talisman flew towards Arbor, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared, and Mu Zhilan's attack talisman missed. When everyone looked closely, they saw that Arbor's expression hadn't changed, and his posture hadn't changed at all. He had only moved a little, and now he was 5 feet away from them. Damn it! Mu Zhilan was enraged, and 2 talismans swiftly darted out between her fingers. Just as she was about to release them, eldest young Sir Qin flicked his sleeve, causing her to stagger. "What are you doing?" Qin Xian glanced at Mu Zhilan in dissatisfaction. Suddenly, they heard a gust of wind, and 2 Dou family disciples simultaneously pounced towards Arbor, greed flickering in their eyes. "Hand over the phoenix egg." Those 2 long swords intertwined to form a sword shadow and slashed towards Arbor. Bang! Arbor's figure once again moved 5 feet away. Chapter 1126. This time, Mu Boming finally saw it clearly, and his expression involuntarily changed as he exclaimed in shock, "It's an illusion talisman matrix." Arbor herself wasn't here at all, so it was useless no matter how they tried to kill her. In the end, they were completely fooled by a talisman matrix. Everyone's complexions were either green or white, extremely unsightly. Mu Boming suddenly shouted loudly, "The illusion talisman matrix can't be too far away from the main body. She's nearby." After saying this, he charged into the nearby forest. Qin Xian followed closely behind and sneered, "Family head Mu, you're already so old, why are you still so angry?" Mu Boming turned a deaf ear to him, and his figure flitted past. Everyone started a carpet search nearby, and sure enough, they discovered Arbor's main body behind a concealed thicket in less than half an hour. At this moment, she was standing behind a patch of charred dead wood. She was dressed in plain clothes and was cold and cheerless. She was expressionless, and her gaze was even extremely icy as she stared at them. What was exciting was that a layer of faint red light also floated around her main body, enveloping her within. It was as if her entire body was enveloped by a wisp of bright and enchanting flame. "It's a phoenix egg." "A bloodfire phoenix egg," a Mu family disciple exclaimed excitedly. Sure enough, that round phoenix egg was squatting steadily next to Arbor. Mu Zijuan, who had always been relatively calm, couldn't keep his composure this time. His breathing stopped, and he clenched his fists as he stepped forward and said, "The phoenix egg is right here. If you want it, then rely on your own abilities." Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but burst into laughter. What's the use of relying on your own abilities? Don't tell me you can strip someone else of their spiritual contract and take the phoenix egg back from a new contract? In your dreams, it still depends on whether the phoenix egg itself is willing or not. Spiritual contract? Everyone was startled, and only then did they clearly see Arbor's current appearance. Not only was her body enveloped by a faint red light, there was even a cluster of burning flames lightly leaping about in the center of her forehead. A mystic beast contract imprint. Damn it, we were a step too late. Miss Qiao has already contracted with the phoenix egg. Ah! My phoenix egg, you actually contracted my blood-fire phoenix egg. Yang Fengyan screamed, unable to control herself. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist laughing again, and his thin lips curled up as he glanced at Yang Fengyan with slight mockery. Younger cousin, I remember that you are merely a level 4 mystic cultivator right now. How could there be a contract with a profound beast? You're still far from being able to form a contract. Yang Fengyan blushed under the veil. She was planning to shamelessly beg the patriarch to leave the phoenix egg for her. With her aptitude, she would definitely be able to break through to become a level 10 mystic cultivator in less than 10 years. At that time, wouldn't she be able to form a contract with the phoenix egg? The young master could not be bothered with his ridiculous cousin who was talking to herself. He turned to Arbor and said, "Xiao Bao, is it because the contract is not completed yet? Is that why you haven't left yet?" Xiao Mu coldly looked at them. Do Fengqi said angrily, "What kind of look is that? Do you believe that I'll dig out your eyeballs?" Ever since she was forcefully transported out of the mystic realm, Do Fengqi had been stifling her anger until now. Now that she saw Arbor, it truly was both old and new grudges surfacing in her heart. Without waiting for family head Do to shout for her to stop, Do Fengqi pounced over and drew her sword to stab straight at Arbor. Chapter 1127. Bitch, who told you to make me lose everything in the secret realm? Bang! Arbor didn't seem to move, but her foot had already ruthlessly kicked Do Fengqi's stomach. Do Fengqi couldn't even get close to the corner of her clothes before she was swiftly sent flying. She crashed heavily into a nearby tree and spat out a mouthful of blood from the severe internal injuries. Everyone turned pale with fright, and they all looked at Arbor as if they were looking at a monster. Do Fengqi was a level 8 mystic cultivator at any rate, but she couldn't even take a single blow from the crown princess? Why? It wasn't that Do Fengqi was too weak, but that the crown princess was too strong. They didn't expect that after not seeing her for several days, the crown princess's cultivation would actually skyrocket to this extent. At this time, Arbor suddenly moved. Like a killing Buddha carved from jade, she directly attacked the two Do family disciples standing in front of her. With two snaps, those two Do family disciples hadn't even recovered their wits when their heads already tilted slightly and hung in Arbor's hands. Ah! Mu Zhilan screamed in horror. Seeing Arbor's ice bead-like eyes turn to her and lock onto her, she couldn't help but shriek in fright and terror. Her terrifying and ice-cold gaze was like a killing machine, completely devoid of any humanity. Qin Xian already saw Arbor's abnormality. She was usually cold and expressionless, but she definitely wouldn't be like this, where she didn't recognize her own family and wanted to kill everyone she saw. Could it be that she suffered from qi deviation while cultivating? Qin Xian was alarmed, and he rushed towards Arbor. Yang Fengyan shrieked behind him, "Cousin, what are you going over there for?" "Cousin, that woman is a lunatic." "Xiao Bao, how are you? Calm down first." Qin Xian had just spoken when he saw the little girl aiming a punch at his chest. This punch clearly already had the strength of a 13th level cultivation base. When the punch came down, Qin Xian's robes were blown back by a strong current of air. He couldn't take it head-on and didn't want to retaliate, so he could only dodge. "Cousin!" Yang Fengyan let out a dying scream. Xiao Mu's unfeeling eyes abruptly flitted in her direction. As soon as Yang Fengyan met Arbor's extremely cold eyes, she was like a duck that had its voice cut off. Her screams came to an abrupt end. What a terrifying gaze! Was that a human's gaze? Arbor was clearly like a moving jade statue. It was a jade statue filled with a terrifying aura that could kill people at any time. After rushing into the crowd, it took the lives of several disciples. "Everyone, quickly disperse!" Second young Master Do shouted in alarm. "Miss Chow must have gone mad from cultivating. He's probably not in his right mind and won't be able to recognize us. Everyone, don't fight her head on. Spread out, don't move, don't move." Hearing this, all the disciples present slowed down their footsteps. Their bodies stiffened as they subconsciously slowed down their breathing. Arbor's footsteps moved slightly, and he slowly walked past the scattered group of disciples. When he arrived in front of a disciple whose eyes were wide open and whose body was stiff, he was about to walk over. That disciple suddenly punched the back of his head. "Go to hell!" Second young Master Do's pupils shrank slightly. However, Xiao Mu abruptly turned around and also threw a punch behind her. Her fair and tender hand directly collided with that disciple's fist. The fist wind traveled up the disciple's arm, and suddenly, the disciple's arm bone was pulverized into powder. Chapter 11:28. That seemingly pink and tender little fist was actually immensely powerful. Following the momentum, it smashed into the disciple's face, causing it to cave in and completely deform. That disciple didn't even have time to cry out before he fell heavily to the ground and stopped breathing. The surrounding disciples were all frightened by her terrifying technique, and they all cried out in alarm as they hastily broke into a run. Arbor's figure flitted past, and she picked up the disciples who were about to make a move like little chicks. She exerted force from her fingertips, and several cracking sounds were heard. Those people's necks all drooped, and they didn't make another sound. "Don't move!" Second young Master Do was simply infuriated to death by this group of brainless fellows. He told them not to move, but they still insisted on moving. How mentally tiring was it to have to lead a group of pig teammates? Didn't they realize that Miss Chow didn't react at all when she saw them at the beginning? It was only because one of them attacked her that she started to flip out. In other words, as long as they didn't move, she should calm down. After second young Master Do finished shouting, no one dared to move carelessly in the slightest. Mu Zhilan was so frightened that she cried. Her body trembled as tears streamed down her face, and she stared fixedly at Arbor, who flashed past her. She only dared to slow her breathing and sob softly when she saw that she had gone a bit further away. Within the range of Arbor's spiritual perception, there were no longer any enemies obstructing her cultivation. All she saw in her spiritual perception were chunks of wooden dummies, and no one would make a fuss and disturb her. Thus, this little fellow turned around and didn't bother to pay them any more attention. Her plain-colored figure flashed and disappeared into the flowers and trees. When the phoenix egg beside her saw this, it also skipped and followed. Little Bao. Eldest young Master Qin was anxious and was about to chase after her when Yang Fengyan desperately blocked him and shrieked, "Cousin, what are you doing? You want to follow this murderous demoness? She killed so many of our Qin family's disciples just now." Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the trees in front of them rustled, and a large furry head suddenly popped out from within. "Rat!" Yang Fengyan suddenly shrieked, her eyes wide open. A rat that looked like a hill, ah! Whoever saw such a rugged-looking mouse? Blind! Mu Zijuan coldly shouted, "It's clearly a large squirrel." As he spoke, the large squirrel's fluffy white tail suddenly swept over, and with a rumble, everyone was shocked and retreated several dozen feet. Seeing that no one was following it, the big squirrel gave them a warning glare, turned around, and moved its fat butt away, huffing and puffing. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that it's Miss Chow's Shen beast? A Dou family disciple asked weakly. Tisk, impossible. Where did she get so many profound beasts? Mu Zhilan raged, doesn't she already have the divine bird Qing Yuan? Now, he even picked up a phoenix egg to form a contract with. But Miss Qiao can draw summoning talismans. Seventh Master Mu also said that the divine bird Qing Yuan was summoned by Miss Qiao. That's true. Mu Zhilan clenched her fists. What's so great about a summoning talisman? Our Mu family also has a summoning talisman. Perhaps it can summon a rare sacred beast. At the mention of the Mu family's only summoning talisman, family head Mu's expression looked like he had stepped on dog poop. Because he discovered that the Mu family's precious summoning talisman had disappeared. Chapter 1131. We have to fly even if we can't. Mu Boming roared angrily and immediately summoned his flying steed. However, that big fellow bumped into a broken branch as soon as it came out. It flapped its wings twice but actually didn't fly up. Instead, it was scraped by all kinds of overgrown branches, almost falling crookedly into the zombie rat swarm and getting bitten by the rats. Mu Boming was so frightened that he promptly put away his flying mystic beast. His head was drenched in cold sweat as he shouted, I really can't summon it. Family head Mu, if this continues, we'll quickly exhaust our physical strength and become the rat swarm's dinner, a middle-aged man said indifferently. He had a scholar's headscarf wrapped around his head, making him look rather scholarly. He held an iron dagger axe that was neither long nor short, but his movements were swift and decisive. With a swing of the dagger axe, he could get rid of a dozen or so large rats. Your Excellency High Priest, then what method do you have to help us escape? It turned out that after the Qin Estates people left, Mu Boming and Dou Heping's teams encountered people from Siming Manor and Beijing Manor. This scholar was none other than Siming Manor's renowned High Priest. He was the one who had divined the abnormal changes in the heavens this time and then announced it to the world. A woman covered in a white veil stood next to the High Priest. She was Siming Manor's eldest heavenly daughter, and her entire body emitted an awe-inspiring and inviolable heavenly daughter aura. She couldn't help but furrow her curved brows at these filthy rats, and she grumpily said, It's our bad luck to encounter you people. Previously, their two great manors' journey had been smooth and unhindered, but they didn't expect to encounter this rat swarm as soon as they encountered Dou Heping and Mu Boming's group. They didn't even know if this rat swarm was charging at them. Mu Boming suffered in silence, but he didn't dare to offend the eldest heavenly daughter, so he could only turn around and look at the High Priest. Your Excellency High Priest, how about we try a fire attack? The High Priest shook his head. Normal fire can't burn in this damp mystic beast forest at all. Unless there's a deep crater like the one we saw before caused by a large firearm explosion. Dou Heping raised his head to look at Arbor, who was squatting on the tree branch, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Miss Qiao was sitting on a tree branch that was as thick as an arm. Beside her was a young and handsome man who was crouching, holding a phoenix egg. His two hands were holding a jar of plums and some unknown snacks, and he was feeding her. Qing Yuan always felt that his little master was really miserable during this period of time. Being half-starved every day, he had lost a lot of weight. If her stomach didn't rumble, she wouldn't even remember to eat. If her stomach rumbled, she wouldn't even know to eat. The previous little master was someone who enjoyed delicacies and fruits every day. This period of time was really too miserable. Even if he ate something, it was like chewing wax. He couldn't taste anything at all. Taking advantage of the idle time, Qing Yuan took out the snacks she had hidden and fed them to her little master. Miss Qiao, you have a firearm on you, right? Dou Heping forcefully suppressed his bellyful of irritation and tugged the corner of his mouth at Xiao Mu with a fake smile. There was no doubt that the crater caused by the large firearm explosion was definitely this Miss Qiao's doing. She was the only one who had a good relationship with that Duan family's young sir, so he might have given her the firearm. That's right, it was her. When we left the Mo Kingdom capital for the Mystic Realm, Chapter 1132. I saw it when the Duan family's Duan Yu gave her a box of concealed weapons. Do Fengqi shouted agitatedly, quickly take it out and throw it. Second young master Do furrowed his brows and forcefully tugged at his sister's arm. Do Fengyao couldn't resist snickering. Are you on good terms with her? Why should she help you? Do Fengqi angrily turned to glare at her. Shouldn't we help each other at a time like this and force these zombie rats to retreat first? Heh, I don't think Miss Chiao is a righteous person. Look at her squatting there. Does she have the slightest intention of helping us? In my opinion, it's completely hopeless. Qinghuan, who was currently feeding the little girl, turned back to glance at them and chuckled. You two don't need to boast and sing to goad my little master into action. Because it's useless. Little master simply can't hear what you fools are saying. Do Fengqi was taken aback and glanced at Do Fengyao. Seeing the latter's flushed face, she realized that the cyan-clothed man had truly guessed Do Fengyao's thoughts. As it turned out, she was purposely cursing at her earlier to goad Arbor into action. The leader of Beijing Manor was called Xianyu, and she was supposedly the future young madam of Beijing Manor. She was in her early 20s and had a slender figure. Her looks could also be considered above average. At this time, she couldn't help but frown when she heard this. She turned to a maidservant beside her and said, "Who knows where that girl Baoyan ran off to? We should be more careful later and split up if there's a chance." "Yes, Mississippi," that maidservant nodded. Baoyan disappeared as soon as she entered the Mystic Beast Forest. Don't bother with her. Our top priority is to escape first. As she said this, she looked up at Arbor, who was watching from a branch, and couldn't resist asking softly, "Miss, who is that person? Is it as family head Do said, that she has some large firearm on her? If so, why didn't she do anything when family head Do said that? She's truly ruthless." Xianyu shook her head. Although she didn't have much contact with this girl, judging from the tone the Do family and Mu family members spoke to her, their relationship didn't seem to be good. It was their business whether they wanted to help or not. How could they force it? At this time, a wave of strange movements suddenly struck. The group of corpse rats seemed to have gone mad, launching a more violent attack than before, desperately pouncing on the crowd. A portion of the zombie rats that had split off from the group of zombie rats even made a beeline for Qiao Mu's tree and attacked its roots. Dozens of rats gnawed at the tree that Arbor was sitting on. The tree shook back and forth and looked like it was about to collapse. Arbor suddenly jumped up and took the profound artifact bow from his back. He shot several arrows in succession. Each arrow could almost penetrate 2 or 3 rats. The strength was very fierce. After killing that small group of blind rats that attacked her, Qiao Mu flew up and landed on another tree. Unexpectedly, a slender and fair arm suddenly came out from behind the tree and grabbed her wrist. The aura coming from behind was very strong. With a slight twist, he grabbed Arbor's arm and jumped to the top of a tree. With his other hand, he pulled out a dagger and stabbed toward her neck artery. Miss Chiao was expressionless. However, the people below were extremely alarmed. That dagger was about to stab her, but Miss Chiao was indifferent. Chapter 1133. A gigantic long tail shot out from behind the person who had captured Qiao Mu and smashed straight at the attacker's back. Bam! A huge sound rang out. The Raksha princess raised her saber and killed a small rat that darted out from Arbor's neck. She picked up Arbor and swiftly leaped up, lightly jumping onto a nearby tree. As it turned out, she had stabbed a large rat beside Arbor's neck. Afterward, the Raksha princess actually turned around and smiled benevolently at Arbor. Anxious, Qinghuan flew forward and angrily asked, "What are you doing?" Princess Luosha's lips curled up ever so slightly, and she smiled almost imperceptibly. She had concealed her aura and secretly followed Arbor, so she had long sensed her abnormality. This little fellow was like a clown, looking for places to cultivate everywhere. As long as she didn't reveal killing intent and didn't obstruct her cultivation, she could definitely become good friends with her. The reason why she was so ruthless to her in the beginning was most likely because she had stepped into her array when she was chasing Seekong Fuling and delayed her cultivation. This child was probably either dumb or stupid, the Raksha princess secretly thought. The Raksha princess snapped her fingers, and a huge wave of rats rushed toward Qing Yuan. Seeing that the two beasts of Arbor were surrounded by rats, a dark glint flitted across the Raksha princess's eyes. She directly pulled Arbor through the forest and headed in a predetermined direction. Qing Yuan swept away a huge wave of rats with a slap and tucked the egg under her armpit with her left arm. She immediately darted up a tree and called out to Chirpy, who was happily beating the rats, and hurriedly chased after her master. Eggy, fuck. Sir Chishua angrily roared, "You damn green bird, don't clip me. Put me down." Aw! This posture was simply humiliating the country and didn't have the slightest bit of a holy beast's dignity. Woo. Freaking wait until I recover my true phoenix body, I'll destroy you in a matter of minutes. Qing Yuan didn't care so much and directly scurried up Chirpy's mountain-like body with the egg. She anxiously pointed ahead. Hurry and chase. The fat squirrel took its chubby steps as it shuttled through the forest with great agility. At this moment, Princess Luo Sha brought Arbor to a place with dense mystic energy and pointed ahead. His meaning was very clear. Cultivate. When you reach a critical juncture in your cultivation, this old lady will take your dog life. What a joke. Of course she had to get back at them. Could it be that he had given this wretched lass a beating for nothing? Moreover, she felt that the wretched girl must have some hidden secrets. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to be so strong that a single mental attack could make her flee in defeat. This wretched girl's current realm was at most at the 13th level, but her spiritual sense was several levels higher than his. That was why he was able to defeat her in one strike. Princess Luo Sha didn't believe that he didn't have any secrets. Xiao Mu glanced at her surroundings. Needless to say, the place that Princess Luo Sha chose was really not bad. The mystic energy in the surroundings was even denser than the stream that Seekong Fuling found previously. Arbor nodded satisfactorily and pattered to the tree in front to sit down. As expected, he entered into a cultivation state as though there was no one around. Princess Luo Sha was a little anxious, afraid that those cute little rats couldn't stop Arbor's beasts. Seeing that Arbor had closed his eyes to cultivate for a short while, she quietly approached and fished out a box of medicinal powder from her sleeve. Chapter 1134. She couldn't wait any longer. She seemed to have heard the beasts chasing after her. The Raksha princess's eyes flickered. One blue luan was enough to make her struggle, not to mention a fat squirrel whose level couldn't be determined. She definitely wasn't their match. Time was fleeting, so she had to grasp it well. The Raksha princess was just about to open the powder box and blow a mouthful of powder onto Arbor's little face. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and firmly grasped her wrist. The Raksha princess's eyes widened. "It's you." As for the rats, they didn't retreat after Blue Luan and the other beasts left. Instead, they surrounded and tore at the humans even more fearlessly. The high priest of Siming Manor had an ugly expression on his face, and his fists that were pressed against the side of his robe clenched slightly. A metal spear picked up a dozen rats, and before the latter could approach, he activated a defensive barrier to reinforce his defenses. Then, he shouted, "Everyone, let's fight and retreat at the same time. Let's see if we can leave this place." At this moment, many disciples of the Do and Mu families were already panicking. They saw several of their companions being dragged in and torn to pieces by the rats. The fear in their hearts was about to completely ignite. Why? At the last moment of their lives, they wanted ordinary disciples like them to protect those people in the center and use their own lives to protect them? They wanted their own lives too. Several disciples of the Do and Mu families completely lost their rationality in their panic and anger. They no longer listened to the Mu and Do family heads' commands and directly wanted to run away from the rat swarm. But as soon as they left the group, they were swallowed by the crazily surging rat swarm. Just as everyone was shrouded in despair, a dazzling and enchanting golden-red light suddenly appeared above their heads, burning like a red sun. It directly crashed down from the sky above the forest, breaking through the heavy gray fog above the forest and the pitch-black mess of dead trees and broken branches. The dazzling red sun-like light just happened to crash into the zombie rat swarm, smashing a wheel-sized shallow hole in the muddy ground covered with rotten leaves. With such an impact, more than half of the zombie rats were blown away. The remaining 500 rats were like stray dogs, fleeing into the depths of the jungle in a panic. "Don't chase." Mu Boming grabbed Mu Zijuan beside him and shook his head while panting. "These should be mutated zombie rats. The remaining several hundred rats are nothing to be afraid of. After all, the combat power of these corpse rats was very weak, and a single slap could kill them." He was afraid that thousands of them would gather together. Even an elephant could be killed by a swarm of ants, not to mention so many mutant zombie rats. Dou Heping also hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he turn his head to look at the person who had come. With one look, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Your Highness the Crown Prince." Everyone looked at the Crown Prince who had suddenly descended from the sky. Dumbfounded, he raised his head to look at the big hole above him, only to see a gray mist flowing out of the hole again. The gray fog above the mystic beast forest was poisonous, and it was impossible for any flying mystic beast to continue flying in this fog for more than 15 minutes. Yet the Crown Prince had directly flown in from the forest's periphery, breaking through the overgrown branches from above, and landed here. This kind of power was truly a bit savage. "Have you seen the Crown Princess?" Mo Lian coldly swept her gaze over everyone as she asked. Chapter 1135. The hearts of Dou Heping and the others instantly sank with a thump. They were done for. Previously, they had even teamed up to snatch the phoenix egg on the Crown Princess. When they made their move, how could they have imagined that the Crown Prince, who loved his wife as much as his life, would rush to the mystic beast forest from the Mo Kingdom capital? The Crown Prince's aura was so powerful that they didn't dare to defy him in the slightest, much less tell him the details. When Prince Mo saw that no one uttered a word and that everyone's eyes were flickering with uncertainty, the uneasiness in his heart grew increasingly intense. "Could it be that you people have teamed up to bully the Crown Princess?" As soon as he finished speaking, the pressure on Prince Mo's body surfaced bit by bit, as if about to erupt in the next moment. "No, no. How would we dare?" Dou Heping hurriedly sent a look to a disciple beside him. The latter submissively stepped forward and whispered in a mosquito-like voice, Your Highness, I haven't seen the Crown Princess before." Prince Mo's deep and cold gaze landed on him as if he was looking at a dead person. Such a terrifying gaze caused the disciple who spoke to start trembling for no reason. An extremely powerful pressure spread out like a cold mist, pressing down on everyone present like a mountain. Even Simon Manor's high priest's breathing also stopped, and he looked at that slender man who was like jade and bamboo in disbelief. What a powerful divine sense pressure dot in front of him. It was as if everyone was a bunch of ants, unable to raise their heads at all. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat. Some of the weaker cultivators had already been crushed by this terrifying pressure and were forced to kneel on the ground. "You dare to lie in front of us?" The Crown Prince didn't move much, but he had already arrived at that disciple's side in a breath's time. He picked him up from the ground and clutched his neck, causing his neck bones to creak and snap. The Dou family disciple's eyes suddenly bulged, and he opened his mouth to gasp for breath. Dou Heping's gaze contracted. Second young Master Dou clenched his fists tightly, forcibly resisting this pressure. With every step he took, he felt the pressure on his body increase by a bit. It was as if it wanted to completely crush him. Second young Master Dou held his breath with great difficulty as he walked in front of Prince Mo. He hastily bowed in a very stiff manner, "Your Highness, please do not be angry. This disciple does not know the Crown Princess, so it is understandable that he does not know the details. Actually, the Crown Princess just passed by here. If your Highness chases after her now, You should still be able to make it in time. Second young Master Do struggled to explain under the pressure. Where? Prince Mo's dark phoenix eyes lit up. He did not know what had happened to Jojo. Jojo did not communicate with him through the jade talisman. He could only feel a faint aura, but he could not pinpoint the exact location. He felt a deep sense of unease in his heart. He shouldn't have let her come to this mystic beast forest alone. The crown princess went that way. Second Do pointed in a direction. Prince Imo moved towards the depths of the forest with a whoosh. Seeing his speed, second young Master Do's gaze involuntarily contracted, and he hastily said, "Your Highness, please be careful. The crown princess seems to have suffered a chi deviation." Prince Mo's phoenix eyes were slightly startled, and he paused. "Someone come." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thousands of figures as fast as the wind instantly landed around him. Chapter 1136. Everyone's hearts trembled when they saw this, and they all subconsciously retreated a few steps. The Eastern Palace had mobilized so many hidden guards. Did they want to kill someone? Huifeng, take 2,000 men and use this place as the center. Dig 3 feet into the ground and search within 3 kilometers. There should be something abnormal underground, Mo Lien ordered coldly. Abnormal situation? What abnormal situation? What else could there be underground? Everyone's gazes flickered as they looked at the crown prince. Family head Do, family head Mu, and Simon Manor's high priest all silently exchanged glances before retracting their pensive gazes. Only Huifeng knew that the crown prince was referring to something like an underground village. The crown prince suspected that there was an underground village cultivation base here. "Yes, Your Highness." Huifeng accepted the order. "The rest of you, follow this monarch to find the crown princess." Mo Lien coldly tossed out these words as her frosty gaze swept over everyone present. Then, her figure darted into the forest. It wasn't until her figure completely disappeared that everyone couldn't help but exhale softly. Just now, the pressure that the crown prince gave them was truly too heavy. When he was present, everyone's breathing had clearly slowed and lowered. This kind of invisible deterrence was simply suffocating. In particular, the look that the crown prince gave them before he left caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. What did that mean? It was clearly, "This monarch will remember all of you." So scary. Could it be that this great crown prince still wanted to retaliate against them afterward? The family heads all felt insecure and thought that they had to keep a close eye on their properties after they returned to avoid suffering from So-and-so's evil schemes. Moreover, this mystic beast forest was extremely large. The direction that Second Do had casually pointed in was actually slightly off. A slight difference could lead to a great loss, and the direction that the crown prince chased in was slightly different from Miss Chow's. It wasn't that Second Do did it on purpose. In truth, he had only seen Miss Chow being taken away by the Raksha princess and had only taken a cursory glance. This forest was filled with many different types of trees, and it was like a large-scale maze. Who knew where the person would run to after taking a random turn? At this time, the Raksha princess, who was about to attack Xiaomu, clutched her broken wrist with a contorted expression as she glared viciously at that person who had suddenly appeared. "Ding Yun, you're treating me like this for this little girl?" Princess Luo Sha screamed, clutching her wrist. Cult Master Ding was simply annoyed to death by this old woman. She was already in her 50s, yet she dressed up like a little girl all day long. Most importantly, she still had special thoughts about him. Is this appropriate? Come on, he really couldn't eat such an old pheasant. He really wanted to ask this old princess what she saw in him. Why couldn't he change? When Qing Luan rushed over, she originally thought that she and the others were one step too late, and that the little master whom everyone missed so much might be in trouble. Who knew? The little master sat there meditating as if there was no one else around. Instead, he saw a man and a woman fighting fiercely. Even if Princess Luo Sha was at her peak, her cultivation was still slightly lower than Cult Master Ding's. Moreover, her conscience had suffered a blow earlier, so it was very strenuous for her to fight now. After exchanging several moves, cult leader Ding saw an opening and without the slightest bit of mercy, he flew up and struck heavily on the pit of her stomach from a distance. Princess Luosha rolled into the forest like a sparrow hawk with its string cut. Chapter 1137. Cough, cough, cough. The Raksha princess clutched her chest with a dark expression and crawled up from the ground while clutching her broken wrist. Coughing heavily, she glared at Cult Master Ding with unwillingness and resentment. Ding Yun, you actually injured me for this slut? Have you already forgotten about our friendship over the years? Cult Master Ding's face darkened. When did this seat ever have the slightest bit of friendship with you? Hadn't they just met once several years ago, and this Raksha princess had already become infatuated with him and fallen head over heels in love with him? In this past year, he had indeed been bored to death, so bored that he had nothing to play with. Thus, he killed that snake beauty and used himself as her substitute to sneak into their Raksha ghost sex lair to play around. This game really allowed him to pry into some of the Raksha ghost sect secrets, and he knew that there might be another master behind this old woman. However, he had used the snake beauty's identity to hide by her side. This old woman had no idea at all. She couldn't even recognize his true body, so what bullshit friendship was there to talk about, haha. As expected, you forgot everything. The Raksha princess's eyes brimmed with tears as she glanced at him resentfully. What did I forget? Cult Master Ding was baffled and impatient. He leaped forward and raised his palm. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being merciless. The Raksha princess knew that this heartless man was a man of his words. If she didn't leave now, she would inevitably fall into his vicious hands. She couldn't beat him now, and she was injured all over, so it was best to retreat first. The Raksha princess turned around and glanced at that man faintly. Cult Master Ding's hair stood on end, and he was about to slap her again when he saw the Raksha princess turn around with sparkling tears in her eyes. She dragged her feet and left without another word. Cult Master Ding didn't chase after her and couldn't be bothered to look at this old woman. The Raksha princess had just dragged her injured body a few steps when she suddenly saw a green-robed figure appear in front of her. When that person turned around and revealed the iron ghost mask on his face, the Raksha princess couldn't help but tremble all over. Arbor seemed to have sensed something and frowned slightly. He slowly withdrew from the state of cultivation and opened his eyes. Upon seeing this, Cult Master Ding hurriedly flashed in front of her. Little girl, what are you cultivating here for? The mystic energy here isn't dense enough. He looked at her with a smile, only to see that the little girl's face was stoic. Her gaze seemed to fall on his face, but it was as if she couldn't see anything. Her gaze was unfocused. Cult Master Ding was immediately shocked. He stretched out his hand and waved it in front of her. His expression suddenly changed, and he rushed forward to ask, "What happened to your eyes? Who did this to you? Don't make a fuss." Qing Luan flew over and swept a glance at Cult Master Ding. She said in a proud tone, "My little master can't see or hear what you're saying. All right, you can leave now. Don't disturb our little master's cultivation, or she'll kill you." Cult Master Ding, What's there to be proud of if you can't see or hear? I do know that there's a secret cultivation ground with dense mystic energy in the Mystic Beast Forest. Cult Master Ding's gaze flickered, and he continued, "Do you want to bring her there?" Qing Luan thought carefully, then ran to Arbor and gestured with her hands. Little Master was so miserable because of this disaster-courting talisman, so she naturally had to cultivate until she could recoup her losses. Only then would she not have lived such a miserable life in vain. Chapter 1138. Cult Master Ding was a bit speechless as he watched from the side. Could the little fellow understand this pantomime of gesturing? He pursed his lips, and a faint light flashed through his alluring eyes. However, this was also good. The longer the little fellow was delayed here, the more likely that Mo Lien would be dead by the time she returned. What bullshit crown princess title would naturally cease to exist, hee hee. The egg also sneered at the side. You damn green bird, do you think she can understand just by gesturing like this? She's just a little fool right now. You're the fool. You've been a fool for 8 lifetimes. Qing Luan and the little white squirrel turned around at the same time and roared at him as if they were enemies. Egg, wait until our little mistress wakes up, she'll definitely take care of you. Just you wait. The little white squirrel snorted. What egg? Who's an egg? I already said that I'm a bloodfire god. Bloodfire my ass, you're just an egg. Qing Luan and the little white squirrel both turned their faces away in disdain. At this time, Arbor already reacted and walked to Cult Master Ding's side with small steps. Cult Master Ding smiled enchantingly and went forward to pull Arbor's little hand. Look at you, you're so wooden-brained. I'll call you Lil Blockhead from now on. Lil Blockhead very rudely threw away his hand and instinctively reached out to pat his sleeve that was hooked by him. His disdain was evident in his words. Ahahaha. The egg laughed. He finally found a human that the little girl disliked more than him. This allowed the egg to regain a bit of confidence. See, this great god isn't the one that the little girl dislikes the most. In the next second, the wildly laughing egg was sucked into Arbor's inner world. Damn girl, let me out. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg angrily shouted in her mind. Contracted mystic beasts could communicate with their masters in their spiritual consciousness. The little fat squirrel laughed until he fell and couldn't help but poke at him. Master dislikes you, dislikes you. Arbor reached out and summoned Qing Luan and the little squirrel back into his inner world at the same time. Only then did he turn his head to look at Cult Master Ding. His meaning was self-evident. Lead the way. She didn't expect that the beasts that were randomly gesturing could really communicate with her perfectly. Cult Master Ding raised his hand to touch his chin and nodded repeatedly. Okay, okay, okay. I'll take you there. After saying that, his hand tried to caress her small hand again, but was decisively rejected again. Sigh. Cult Master Ding sighed. The little girl was rejecting him out of instinct. How to break it? If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have captured her mother back then and used himself as her substitute. Look at how much the little girl disliked him now. Ding! Brother Ding! Suddenly, a timid voice came from the forest. Ding Yun was slightly taken aback. He turned his head and saw Xinu standing not too far away. She was biting her lower lip lightly and looking at him with a faint gaze. Cult Master Ding shuddered all over for no reason. Xinu was originally his mother's adopted daughter. He didn't know why she suddenly became his fiancée a few years ago. When the manor announced it to the outside world, he almost thought that he was hallucinating at first. Only after confirming it again and again did he realize that his mother was actually serious. How terrifying. He was just a wanderer of the Jianghu. Did he need such a terrifying thing like a fiancé? He didn't need it at all. For the past 2 years, every time Xinu saw him, she would use this kind of "you betrayed me" expression. She would stare at him foolishly. It really made all the hair on his body stand on end. Chapter 1139. What did you come here for? Ding Yun reflexively took a step back, cowardly hiding behind Xiao Mu. Arbor was expressionless. She only saw the human-shaped stake in front of her and had no idea what they were doing. Big Brother Ding, you promised Mother that you would return to the manor this month. The corners of Xinu's mouth drooped slightly, and she unconsciously clenched her fists tightly. I did promise, but this month isn't over yet. It's the same if I go back at the end of the month. Ding Yun waved his hand impatiently. All right, stop lecturing me. Hurry back to the manor. This isn't a place you can come to. This place is dangerous at every step. With your strength, you really aren't qualified to stay here for long. Arbor suddenly turned around and furrowed her slender brows. She stretched out her little paw and tugged hard at Ding Yun's sleeve. Hurry up and leave. Go cultivate. You're so long-winded like an old man. All right, all right, all right. We'll go right away. Cult Master Ding's sullen and impatient expression immediately swept away, and he grabbed her little hand with a smile. However, slap. Arbor's small, expressionless face was taut. She once again used facts to prove that she disliked him from the bottom of her heart. Cult Master Ding's mouth twitched, and he settled for the next best thing, grabbing her sleeve. I'll hold your hand. It'll be faster this way. Big Brother Ding. Xinu's entire body trembled slightly, and she looked at Ding Yun and Arbor in disbelief. Have you forgotten what Mother told you? Have you thrown Mother's teachings to the 9 heavens? Xinu asked in a trembling voice. Xinu. Ding Yun's face was cold and angry, and his tone was somewhat irritated as he said, I haven't forgotten a single word Mother said. Can I trouble you to stop lecturing me? Was this lecturing? This was a matter of life and death. She was concerned about him. Xinu's tears welled up, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a trace of determination flashed through her eyes. Bring young master back to the manor. Yes. 2 men in black appeared behind Xinu, and they cupped their fists at Ding Yun. Young master, please follow us back to the manor. Ding Yun sneered, you want to keep me here with just the likes of you? Big Brother Ding, if Mother knew that you had feelings for this little girl, she would definitely bring you back at all costs. What nonsense are you spouting? Cult Master Ding's expression changed slightly as he stared at Xinu. When have I ever had any strange thoughts about her? All of this is just your imagination. Go back. Ding Yun rebuked angrily. All right. Since you say you don't have any thoughts, then kill her right now. Xinu signaled with her eyes, and the 2 manor guards immediately stepped forward. Cult Master Ding was both shocked and furious. He subconsciously blocked in front of Arbor. You dare! Xinu suddenly took a step forward and almost bumped into Ding Yun's body. You're not tempted? No? Do you think Mother would let this scourge stay if she knew? All the decisions that Mother makes will only benefit you the most. For the past 20 years, this has never changed from beginning to end. Why don't you listen to her? Big Brother Ding, don't be willful and act rashly. Xinu coldly shouted, bring young master back. Yes. Without waiting for the 2 manor guards to step forward, Ding Yun suddenly launched an attack. 2 mystic energies flew out of thin air, and at the same time forcing the 2 to retreat. He couldn't care about anything else. He pulled Arbor over, and with a whoosh, he ran away. Young master! A young girl in a pink dress exclaimed. Chapter 1140. Ding Yun dragged Arbor and glided over the forest at an extremely fast speed. Young master! A young girl in a pink dress couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Xinu's body swayed slightly as she stared faintly in the direction the 2 people left in, softly muttering something to herself. Young master ran away again. Why didn't you chase after him? The little girl in the pink dress quickly walked to her side and called out. Only when she got closer did she hear young Mrs. murmur. We can't chase after him, we can't chase after him. Xinu's tears streamed down her face. He seems to be merciful in all aspects, but he's actually a heartless and emotionless person. Just now, she pretended to order someone to kill the girl beside him and tested him. Looking at his abrupt change in expression just now, that was called a mixture of shock and anger. For so many years in the past, this man seemed to wear a natural mask even when facing his own mother. Although he had a smiling appearance all day long, in reality, he had an expression that was neither sad nor happy. Xinu thought that this person's temperament was naturally extremely cold, but it turned out that wasn't the case. He would also be angry and would stand in front of others to stare at her with a man-eating gaze and roar, "You dare! Xinu squatted on the ground dejectedly, causing Bao Yan, the maidservant in pink, to anxiously circle around her. "Young miss, say something. What's going on? Who is that girl beside young master?" Seeing that Xinu didn't move for a long time, the impatient Bao Yan anxiously stomped her feet. All right. If you're not going to look for her, I'll go look for young master." After saying that, she turned around and dived into the forest again, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Xinu cried for a while before taking out a pen and paper and hastily writing a letter and handing it to her two subordinates. "Quickly return to the manor and personally hand this letter to old madam." "Yes." The two manor guards didn't dare to delay and hurriedly cupped their fists to receive the letter before turning to leave in a hurry. On the other side, Emolien paused her steps and turned to look at the gloomy forest path with a slight frown. She had no idea where Jojo had run off to. Earlier, she could still feel a faint trace of her aura, but now. A soft sound was heard from the underbrush, and a head suddenly popped out. The two hidden guards behind the crown prince quickly moved forward and suppressed the other party with one move. They pulled the girl out from the bushes. The strength of their hands was not weak. Hey, softer, softer, softer." Sikong Fuling hurriedly called out. Emolien's expression changed slightly, and she landed beside her with a swoosh. She unfurled a silk scroll in her hand and asked coldly, "Have you seen this little girl?" Sikong Fuling, who was being escorted by two hidden guards, cast a sidelong glance at that painting. On the drawing paper, although the little girl's face was expressionless, the lively smile in her eyes was completely embellished. It could be seen that the person who drew this painting rather hoped that this stoic face would smile frequently. Sikong Fuling's eyes turned slightly before she shook her head and replied seriously, "Never seen him before." This unknown wild man in front of her didn't lose out to her older brother in terms of looks, temperament, and appearance. He couldn't be having an affair with the little girl, right? Emolien's icy gaze flickered slightly. The hidden guard's sword slashed toward Sikong Fuling's face. "If you don't speak, I'll disfigure your little face." Sikong Fuling's eyes bulged, and she shrieked with a pale face, Hey. Chapter 1141. You're so unreasonable. Do I deserve to die just because I haven't seen this young lady before? Sikong Fuling glared at Emolien while blowing her beard. Her eyes swiveled as she said, "You look like a decent person, but why are you so heartless? You don't even have the slightest bit of tender feelings for girls." The hidden guard at the side twitched his mouth slightly. "Do it," Emolien icily instructed. Seeing that the blade in the hidden guard's hand was about to leave a bloody mark on Sikong Fuling's face, Sikong Fuling immediately panicked and hurriedly shouted, Hey. Stop. Hey, I say, handsome lord, what exactly do you want to know? I already told you that I really don't know her and have never seen her before. What a joke. She already knew that her elder brother was a little interested in this young lady, so of course she wouldn't trick her elder brother into helping an outsider. Humph, she wouldn't say it even if she knew. You're lying. Emolien's voice sounded as though it had been scooped up from the depths of hell as it was unusually cold. You have her scent on you. His gaze landed on this young lady in front of him, deep and frosty to the extreme. This young lady didn't seem to be a member of an orthodox sect. Her thin muslin dress had been scraped around in the forest overgrown with dead trees, and it had already become very messy by now. Even though she was wearing an outer garment, it couldn't conceal the fair skin underneath. Sikong Fuling. Take it away. Sikong Fuling pursed her small mouth and forcefully slapped away the two hidden guards' hands. She shook her body and straightened her collar as she muttered, It's not like you have a dog's nose. Why are you so sensitive? Insolence. The hidden guards glared angrily as they berated in unison. Sikong Fuling jumped in fright and hurriedly patted her chest with her small hand as she whined coquettishly, Why are you so fierce? All right, I'll tell you. Her eyes swiveled again as she suppressed the crafty glint in her eyes and said unwillingly, "Yes, I've seen that young lady. However, we've already parted ways. You've also seen it now, I'm alone." "Where did she go?" Mo Lien questioned. "How would I know where she went?" Sikong Fuling rolled her eyes and cried out, "That young lady was ice cold and didn't say a word for half a day. When she left, she didn't even tell me. How would I know where she went? That wretched girl had caused her to wander around the forest in search of her. She was even afraid that she would starve to death. Just thinking about it made her angry. Since when did she, Sikong Fuling, have such rotten good intentions?" Mo Lien raised her hand slightly, and several hidden guards immediately rushed up to restrain Sikong Fuling. "Let's go. Leave, your sister." Sikong Fuling cried out angrily, "What are you doing? What's the point of capturing me? Even if you catch me, I won't be able to make the little girl appear." Hey, it hurts. My hand hurts. Stop pulling. What the fuck, this lunatic. Just because she had come into contact with the little girl before, how crazy was she? Lead the way. Lead the way. Brothers. I really don't know where she is. Sikong Fuling cried out in exasperation. Let go. I'm warning you. If you don't let go, I won't be courteous anymore. A hidden guard unceremoniously slapped the back of her head. Let's go. Sikong Fuling still wanted to resist, but she was forcefully pushed and pulled by several hidden guards, and her hands were shackled with mystic energy locking shackles. Dot. Chapter 1142. Tsuiwei Mountain. Mountain ranges stacked on top of each other, stretching on endlessly. Carefree Valley was located at the bottom of Tsuiwei Mountain and was covered by miasma all year round. Ordinary people could not get close. The ingenious part of Beijing Manor was that it was located in the center of Carefree Valley and was surrounded by a green lake. The manor was covered with exotic flowers and plants. Everywhere was lush and beautiful. The old madam of Beijing Manor, Ding Zian, was a great beauty whose name was known throughout the pugilistic world when she was young. The most commonly accepted legend about her was that she was hurt by love. It was said that she had once chased after the young master of the mermaid race. Who would have thought that the young hero's heart already belonged to someone else? In the end, she was trapped by love and deeply hurt, so she hid from the world and refused to see anyone. A few years later, the rumors became even more outrageous. It was said that after she was hurt by love, she casually found someone to marry. After she became pregnant, she personally killed her husband and gave birth to the young master of Beijing Manor, Ding Yun. After that family found out that their son had died an unnatural death, they launched an attack on Carefree Valley more than 10 years ago. The ending was very tragic. Hundreds of people in the family were all massacred by Beijing Manor overnight. There were even more exaggerated rumors that Ding Zian actually gave birth to twins at that time, but only one young master, Ding Yun, was announced to the public. The reason was that when the two children were 10 years old, she made them kill each other. The one who survived was the young master, and the one who died was thrown out of the valley to feed the wolves. From then on, Beijing Manor was demonized. Although it was one of the 4 great manors, it had long been removed from the ranks of the righteous path. The sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun was setting. In the pavilion in the middle of the lake sat an old monk with a white beard and white eyebrows. In front of him was a cup of high-quality tea that was emitting light smoke. 2 maidservants stood on both sides of him until a cough slowly sounded. "Madam." Ding Zian waved to the 2 maidservants, and the 2 maidservants bowed and retreated out of the pavilion. Cough, cough, cough. Ding Zian was more than 50 years old. Her cheeks were thin, and her wrinkled face was full of vicissitudes of life. She leaned on a walking stick carved from black sandalwood and slowly sat down in front of the old monk. She smiled and said, "Master, sorry to keep you waiting." The old monk stroked his beard and smiled. "Madam's body is better." Cough, cough, cough. Ding Zian chuckled. It's been over 10 years. After taking the medicine that Grandmaster gave me, my condition has improved. The old monk nodded with a smile. Master, you came a few days earlier than the scheduled date. Is there anything else you need to do? Madam, do you still remember the divination I performed for young Master Ding 15 years ago? Of course. Ding Xian nodded solemnly. This old monk observed the stars last night and discovered that young Master's faded star faintly emitted a fiendish red aura. Ding Xian was slightly surprised. Do you know what it is? The red light is binding the faded star, indicating that the young Master has already fallen into the tribulation of love. The old monk said softly. Love tribulation? Ding Xian was shocked. She shook her head and said, impossible. All these years, Yun-Er's natural disposition has been undisciplined and free. She has never been reluctant to part with any woman. How could she have fallen in love? I don't really believe it either. Although this old monk has jumped out of the secular world, I have often heard news of young Master Ding's adventures. Ever since I received Great Master's advice 15 years ago, I've been very careful. There are only a few old maidservants in the manor. Yun doesn't like any of them. Could it be that in the years when young Master Ding went out to establish the demonic sect? Chapter 1143. You mean that Sikong fooling by his side? Ding Xian shook her head. That's even more impossible. For Yun-Er's safety, I've investigated every single one of his female subordinates, Ding Xian said with certainty. This madam has investigated that Saintess Sikong Fuling. She has always treated Yun-Er as an elder brother and nothing else. Yun only sees her as a younger sister. As for those other female subordinates, they're even less worth mentioning. A few of them had designs on Yun-Er, but after Yun-Er discovered them, they were all personally executed by him. Her son had always been such a heartless child since he was young. Don't be fooled by how he laughed and joked with others all day long, as if he was very happy. In reality, he was abnormally cold and indifferent. He didn't even have the slightest bit of affection for his own mother. As a result, the number of times he returned home these past few years had gradually decreased. If she hadn't sent people to call him back again and again, he probably wouldn't have thought of returning home to visit his mother for several years. The old monk sighed and said, but the matter that this old monk has been worried about for more than 10 years still happened in the end. Madam, the most important thing right now is to find this person as soon as possible so that we can think of a way to resolve it. Yun-Er, he has suffered enough. It's also my fault. When I was pregnant with him, I made him suffer so much and even almost caused him to die. I don't want him to experience any more tribulations or difficulties. Master, you must help me, you must help me. Cough, cough, cough. Madam, please rest assured. The old manor lord of Beijing Manor has always been this old monk's old friend. This old monk will definitely not disappoint his old friend. Ding Xian lightly bit her lip and nodded. Many thanks, Master. This child should have lived like a prince for his entire life, but he was born with such a bitter fate. It's me who harmed him, it's me. If he had listened to my father back then, he wouldn't have come to this stage today. Now it's also as Master's divination. If the love tribulation isn't removed, he will definitely suffer for all his lifetimes. Ding Xian softly murmured, Master, I don't want to be like this. I only wish for my child to be safe and happy. Is this too much? Madam, eldest miss sent a letter back. A middle-aged female servant in green clothes quickly walked to the pavilion and said. When Ding Xian heard the servant mention Xinu, her expression softened. Bring the letter in. This child, was the daughter-in-law candidate she had personally chosen because she was very clear that Yun did not like her. With such a daughter-in-law, Yun was safe. He would never be moved by Xinu, so naturally, he would not deal with that troublesome love tribulation. Speaking of which, the reason why her son couldn't fall in love with anyone was entirely because of her. It was her fault, but she couldn't make up for it now that she knew that she was selfish and sacrificed you for Yun. However, she had previously told you about this matter, letting her clearly know that Yun's life would be in danger after falling in love. You had to choose whether to marry or not. Xian personally agreed and didn't care much about that. That was why the marriage was finalized a few years ago. Beijing Manor always had its own special communication channel, so letters were exchanged very quickly. Ding Xian recalled that Yu had left for 2 days and probably had something to report, so she hurriedly opened the letter to take a look. She jumped up and shouted with a stern expression, "Men, summon 2 Beitan enforcers to head to the Mystic Beast Forest and kill that woman by young Lord's side." Chapter 1144. 2 days later. Arbor opened her eyes, a hint of dissatisfaction in her heart. The barrier to the peak of level 13 was clearly within reach, but no matter how long she cultivated, she still couldn't break through it. If she was still sensible in the past, she would definitely understand that cultivating so impatiently was actually not a good thing. But now, in just a few short days, she had absorbed only 1/5 of the essence soil. This was really too fast. Cult Master Ding walked over with a pile of fruits. Seeing her open her eyes, his eyes couldn't help but light up. "Little blockhead, you've finished cultivating." Arbor blinked, her gaze following him back and forth. Seeing him holding a large pile of colorful little fruits, she couldn't help but stand up and trot to his side. While she was at it, she snatched a few fruits from his hands and subconsciously stuffed them into her mouth. Cult Master Ding stared blankly, then waved his hand in front of her eyes in surprise. "Your eyes are better." Arbor ignored him. Cult Master Ding saw that she had eaten a few fruits, so he thought that the fruits he picked up tasted pretty good. So he also grabbed 2 fruits and threw them into his mouth, then afterwards, he spat it out with a pef, pef, pef. His handsome face completely scrunched up, and he looked at Xiao Mu in disbelief. "You! It's so sour, don't eat it." As he spoke, he quickly slapped away the fruits in her hands. "How can this be eaten?" This child was too careless. It was so sour, but she could still eat it so calmly. She was simply too amazing. Xiao Mu's jet black eyes rolled slightly before she looked away. She turned around and pattered away, about to open up a path. Cult Master Ding hurriedly grabbed her sleeve and said with a stifled expression, "How about this? I'll take you to the city to eat good food, okay?" Xiao Mu flung away his hand that was grabbing her sleeve and crisply patted away the non-existent dust on her sleeve. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, her brows suddenly twitched, and an austere aura directly pounced at her, so fast that it was unimaginable. Arbor instinctively flipped to the side and dodged the fatal strike. He leaped lightly and landed beside Ding Yun. Ding Yun was shocked. His body quickly moved, and he was already in front of Arbor. He glared angrily at the 2 elders who suddenly came out of the forest. "North Altar Protector, what are you 2 doing?" "Young Lord, sorry for the offense." One of the old men shouted angrily and flew forward to grab Ding Yun. The other person stepped forward, and a thick wave of profound energy was attached to it. He once again attacked Arbor. Arbor turned her body and was about to jump away when she saw a pair of blood-red scissors coming towards her. It was aimed at her wrist, and with a "kacha" sound, the scissors cut. The profound artifact was very powerful. It cut off a piece of her sleeve from her wrist in a single move. If she hadn't retracted her hand quickly, that thing would have cut off her fair and tender wrist. Bang! Arbor gave a side kick, hitting the back of the old man's hand. Her body moved back a bit, and she nimbly stepped on the withered bushes. With a flash, she appeared behind the old man. A black ferrule suddenly appeared in her hand, and with a surge of profound energy, she abruptly struck the back of the old man's head. The old man quickly opened a defensive barrier and turned around to block with the large scissors. But with a clang, Arbor's wrist was actually shaken by that pair of scissors until it ached, and she took a step back. "Elder Hang, stop!" Ding Yun's gaze shrunk, and he suddenly wanted to sweep away the protector who was pestering him like a madman. Chapter 1145. Young master, don't be so obstinate. Let Elder Hung kill this woman, and you come back with us. No. Ding Yun was very anxious. He was very clear about the cultivation levels of these two old ghosts. That was the suppressed cultivation of a level 4 spiritual master. Lil Wood was definitely not Elder Heng's match. I'll go with you. Let her go. Ding Yun shouted angrily. Let her go. Elder Heng, who was holding the large scissors, shook his head. I'm sorry, young master. This is Madam's order. Today, this old man must leave this woman's life here. After saying this, Elder Heng stepped up the attack in his hands. The large scissors flipped up and down, and with a fierce force, directly cut towards Arbor's small neck. Arbor turned around 4 or 5 times, frowning in displeasure. She coldly looked at the large scissors pointed at her throat. Clang! Her small jade-white hand came in contact with the large scissors, and there was a metallic spark. The old man was suddenly shocked, and his eyes widened in disbelief. How can this be? This woman could actually collide with his mystic weapon with her bare hands. While he was thinking, Arbor slapped away the scissors with her ferrule. She raised her hand, and 3 hexagonal snowflakes flew out. Bang, bang! They cut 2 trees beside the old man, and the upper half of the trees directly fell down. Seeing that it was about to fall on the old man, Elder Heng suddenly threw out a palm, and directly smashed the fallen tree into pieces. I really underestimated you. In a split second, wisps of spiritual energy fluctuated from the elder's body, and his level 4 spiritual cultivator cultivation surged inch by inch. He abruptly stretched out a withered black claw to grab Xiao Mu's shoulder. When the old man who was holding Ding Yun saw this, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his brows. He suddenly jumped up, and threw a sword from Arbor's back, directly approaching. 2 enforcers. Cult Master Ding looked at the scene in front of him with fear. His body moved faster than his brain, and in an instant, he pounced towards Arbor. He suddenly grabbed Arbor's small body and turned her around to press her down. One of the protectors didn't have time to pull back his sword, and with a rip, a bloody wound appeared on Cult Master Ding's back. Elder Heng's gaze slightly shrank, almost immediately rushing forward to check his injuries. Young master. The other person also hurriedly withdrew his sword and bent forward in fear. Young master, how are you? Ding Yun lay there with his face down and did not move for a long time. The 2 enforcers were anxious to death. One of them reached out to help him turn around, while the other lowered his head and hurriedly called out, Young master, young master. A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of Ding Yun's eyes, which were covered by his hair. His hands suddenly burst out with spiritual light as he punched the waist of the 2 enforcers with his left and right fists. Crack! 2 crisp sounds of bones cracking could be heard. The eyes of the 2 old guardians were wide open as they were hit in the waist and abdomen by the fist wind. Their entire body flew back horizontally and fell heavily to the ground with a bang. They completely didn't expect that their young master would suddenly attack them. After Ding Yun's attack succeeded, he quickly stood up. He kicked with the tip of his foot and picked up the sword that one of the enforcers dropped. Without blinking, the sword's light exploded and suddenly slid past the necks of the 2 enforcers. 2 extremely thin lines of blood appeared on the necks of the 2 North Altar enforcers. Until they died, their dead fish eyes were wide open in anger, completely unable to understand why their young master would kill them. Chapter 1146. Disregarding the injury on his back, Ding Yun hastily walked to Arbor's side and grabbed her hand. Let's go. She probably didn't just send these 2 people. However, as soon as he moved, he couldn't help but lean heavily against a nearby tree. He only barely managed to steady himself by holding onto the tree. The little girl flung his hand away and expressionlessly glanced at him. Cult Master Ding could only turn to look at her with a wry smile. Suddenly, the little fellow pattered to his side and tapped two of his acupoints with her fingers. Then, she very instinctively took out a bottle of medicinal powder and poured a bit onto the wound on his back. Afterwards, with a smack, her little hand heavily pressed against the wound on his back. Who knew what kind of ointment she had stuck on his wound? The blood on his back immediately stopped flowing, and the wound caused by mystic energy didn't hurt as much as before. Cult Master Ding tugged at the corner of his mouth and forced a smile at the little girl. "I'm fine. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Let's go." He understood his mother's methods too well. She probably wouldn't feel at ease even if he thought about it and would probably bring people here to personally execute Lilith Blockhead. Swish swish swish, heavenly law's invisible bindings swiftly wrapped around Cult Master Ding's limbs and firmly fixed him in place. A harsh glint flashed through Ding Yun's eyes. He abruptly flung his hand and grabbed Arbor. He leaped into the air and swiftly broke free of heavenly law's bindings. However, his complexion paled even more, and his breathing was slightly hurried. How could heavenly law let off someone who recklessly used spiritual energy in the lower star domain like this? Invisible chains chased after Ding Yun at high speed. Ding Yun dodged while dragging Arbor through the forest. In the blink of an eye, the two figures were already far away. Crown Prince Emo raised his head slightly in interest. He saw several crows that had shed their feathers cawing as they flew past the treetop before flapping their wings and flying away. "Your Highness, we found an underground base 5 kilometers to the southeast." Huifeng's expression was a bit excited. "It looks quite large. Does your Highness want to go take a look?" Mo Lien glanced into the distance again before nodding slightly and following Huifeng toward the southeast. In an abandoned hut outside the Mystic Beast Forest. At this moment, the Raksha princess was kneeling in front of a man with a metal demon mask, trembling all over. She didn't even dare to raise her head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It seemed like he had been severely beaten up just now. "Idiot! For your selfishness, you exposed our underground base and even caused us to suffer such a huge loss. You don't deserve to die." The middle-aged man was furious. He suddenly stomped on Princess Luosha's body. The Raksha princess fell to the ground and curled into a ball. She trembled as she cried out, "Hall Master, please spare me. Please spare me. Master's plan has been completely ruined by you, stupid woman." The man with the iron demon mask suddenly stepped forward, squatted down, put one hand on his knee, and grabbed Princess Raksha's hair with the other. "Take everyone and leave the base immediately." Princess Luosha's pupils constricted. "Master, you mean to give up on this base?" This was the second largest base in the organization. Were they going to give it up so easily? Slap! The middle-aged man slapped her. "What else can we do? The Crown Prince's men are about to search this place." "It's too late, Hall Master. Their men have already arrived. Burn! Burn it all!" A cold glint flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. Chapter 1147. Huifeng gloomily directed the hidden guards to put out the fire. However, this underground fire burned abnormally fast, and several explosions could be heard in the distance. Mo Lien frowned and reached out to stop him. "No need to search. Let's go." The opponent didn't seem to be simple. Of course, if not for this, they wouldn't have been able to secretly operate so many underground bases without being discovered. "Your Highness, we can still search quickly. There's no need. Since they've already given up on this place, they won't leave any clues here," Mo Lien said indifferently. "Let's go. The most important thing is to find the Crown Princess and bring her back." Mo Lien imperceptibly creased her brows. Could it be that the little fellow had missed him and returned to the Mo Kingdom capital by herself first? He couldn't calm himself down. He kept having the feeling that something bad had happened. My Lien's section break, 2 days later, on the bustling streets of Guanlan City. Sir, sir, sir! I finally found you. A little girl with a rosy pink face and an extremely tender face panted as she caught up to an enchanting man in purple. She panted as she looked at him joyfully. Ding Yun looked at her with an unsightly expression. How did you find me? Beijing Manor's method of finding people was a bit special. Ding Yun was worried that Bao Yan, this girl, had exposed his whereabouts and lured his mother's group over. Bao Yan quickly waved her hand cleverly and said, I didn't inform madam. Sir, I only saw you twice in the forest, but you ignored me when I called out to you. I chased after you the entire way before finally catching up. Cult Master Ding stopped, his figure swaying a couple of times in exhaustion. In order to break free of that damn heavenly law's restraints these 2 days, he had expended quite a bit of effort. This damn heavenly law was truly a dog trying to catch mice, meddling in other people's business. It was like gangrene attached to his bones the entire way, refusing to let go. It was so annoying that he was about to be annoyed to death. Fortunately, he had finally broken free for the time being. It seemed like he still had to be careful when using spiritual energy in the future. Sir! The little girl Bao Yan hastily went up to support his arm, looking over worriedly. You used your spiritual energy, didn't you? You promised old madam that you wouldn't use your spiritual power casually in the outside world. I'm fine. Cult Master Ding indifferently brushed away the girl's arm and frowned slightly. Alright, go back to the manor first. Why, young master, don't you want to go back with me? Ding Yun shook his head. I'm not going back for now. You can go. Remember not to tell anyone about my whereabouts. I'm not leaving. Bao Yan stomped her feet and shouted, I finally found young master. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just follow you. You! Young master, why don't you go back? You haven't returned to the manor for more than 2 years. Madam misses you very much. Why are you asking so many questions? Cult Master Ding's expression became increasingly impatient. He turned his head to look at the little girl who was standing at the side, as cool as water and abnormally indifferent. Young master, who is she? Bao Yan immediately looked at Arbor warily. It was this girl, right? She made young Miss Xian so angry that she cried. Arbor had just recovered his sight among his 5 senses, so everything he saw seemed a bit strange. As he looked around, his gaze landed on a restaurant signboard. Morning Cloud Restaurant. She instinctively wanted to step inside. Chapter 1148. When Cult Master Ding saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, reaching out to grab her small hand. Jojo, you're hungry, aren't you? How could Arbor know what it felt like to be hungry right now? She was completely acting out of instinct. Seeing Cult Master Ding run all the way to her side, Arbor suddenly raised her eyes to look at him. Although her face was expressionless, in Cult Master Ding's eyes, she looked adorably silly. He saw her reach out 2 jade-white fingers and forcefully tug at his sleeve. Why are you tugging at our young master's sleeve? Bao Yan impatiently pushed her hand away. Go, 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 don't bother our young master anymore. Arbor's small face was expressionless as she swept a glance at her, then turned her small head to continue looking at Morning Cloud Restaurant. The little fellow's large eyes blinked twice, revealing an adorable yearning look. Cult Master Ding hurriedly asked, You're hungry, right? You want to eat, right? Answer me, and I'll bring you up. How could Arbor know what the hell he was talking about? This Cult Master Ding once again tragically didn't get any response. He couldn't help but sigh lowly and could only say, Alright, then let's go in. He didn't expect this little blockhead to have any reaction. In any case, she didn't seem to like him from beginning to end. Young master. Bao Yan grabbed his hand and rolled her eyes as she softly said, Spare me, young master. Look at her, she's so silly and can't even speak. She's definitely a silly girl. When he thought of the first time they met, Arbor's expressionless face, her eyes unable to see, her mouth unable to speak, her face expressionless when she was with people and things, like a moving jade statue. Cult Master Ding's heart couldn't help but tighten. "It's none of your business." Cult Master Ding raised his hand, but before he could grab the little girl's small hand, he saw her turn and walk into Morning Cloud Restaurant. "Bao Yan, go back. Go back to the manor and tell my mother that I don't have time to go back in the short term." Cult Master Ding might also feel that his words were a bit too much, so he couldn't help but frown and say, "Tell her that I'll go back to visit her in a few days." "But young master, you promised old madam." Ding Yun did not wait for her to finish and ran into Morning Cloud Restaurant to chase after the young lady. Bao Yan took a deep look at her young master and watched him hurriedly enter the restaurant. She stomped her feet and hurriedly followed him in. "Ah, young master, young miss, what do you want to eat? Our shop doesn't accept mystic coins, we only accept mystic grade and above herbs or forging materials." The waiter from the Morning Cloud Restaurant welcomed them with a smile. "I've really earned a lot today." The beautiful ice sculpture in front of him made his eyes light up. The waiter hurriedly wiped the table and stool and asked the little beauty to sit down. There was a middle-aged man who was eating noodles at the side. With half a noodle in his mouth, he stared at Arbor in a daze. "What are you looking at?" Ding Yun glared at the man, causing the middle-aged man to shrink his neck and hurriedly retract his gaze. Arbor was also amused. She also turned her head to look at the middle-aged man. In fact, she was looking at the bowl of noodles placed in front of him. Ding Yun tilted his head and looked at the little girl in front of him with a smile. He threw a piece of forging material to the waiter and said, "2 bowls of noodles." "Alrighty." The waiter happily went to prepare. Not a moment later, 2 steaming bowls of noodles were placed on the table. Ding Yun swept a glance at Bao Yan standing to the side and frowned. "Why aren't you leaving?" Chapter 1149. "No, young master, this servant wants to go back with you," Bao Yan said resolutely. Ding Yun ignored her. This servant girl had been picked up by his mother and brought back to the mountain villa when she was young. She had always stayed in his courtyard to serve him, and her temperament had always been very stubborn. Once she decided on something, it was rare for her to change her mind, so Ding Yun was disinclined to say anything more. Arbor stared curiously at the bowl of noodles in front of her, and her small hand impatiently reached into the bowl. "Wait!" Cult Master Ding jumped in fright and hastily grabbed her small hand. However, he felt that it was like a small ice cube in his hand, cool and without a trace of warmth. He hurriedly took a pair of chopsticks and placed it in her hand. "How can you use your hands? It's so hot. Come, use the chopsticks." Arbor stared at the 2 bamboo chopsticks in her hand with an expression that she had never seen before. She shook them, then grabbed a pair of chopsticks with each hand and reached into the bowl with difficulty to stir the noodles. After a long time, she didn't even manage to scoop up a single strand of noodles. If she found out later that she had once been so foolish, she probably wouldn't just hang up and beat up the giant ape for a day and be done with it. That was why it was said that one couldn't be too single-minded and absolute when doing anything. As a cultivation maniac, her mind was blank except for cultivation. She couldn't even take care of herself. This really wasn't good. Bao Yan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Heavens, this fool doesn't even know how to use chopsticks. Bao Yan. Ding Yun's expression turned cold. Bao Yan closed her mouth with a disgruntled expression, glaring at Arbor with a bit of jealousy and resentment. There had never been anyone or anything that could attract young master's full attention like this. Young master had always been someone who played around and didn't care about anyone or anything, but now, he actually doted on a fool so much. "Come." Great Cult Master Ding simply put down his bowl and chopsticks. He picked up a clean pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of noodles, and brought it to her lips. "Eat." Darling Chow glanced at Cult Master Ding and moved her small head closer to open her mouth. With a crack, she bit off half of the chopsticks. Cult Master Ding. Bao Yan burst out laughing. After a long struggle, he finally poured the entire bowl of noodles into her stomach. Arbor raised his hand to rub his belly, got up, and walked towards the door. Baoyan. She had eaten the noodles and drank the soup. Was she going to leave after eating her fill? This little fool is really a little hateful. Blockhead. Cult Master Ding hurriedly threw down his bowl of noodles, got up, and ran towards her. Arbor was walking out the door when he bumped into the second shopkeeper, who had just come back from collecting the bill. The second shopkeeper inadvertently raised his head and was immediately stunned. He cried out involuntarily, "Crown Princess!" The Crown Prince and Arbor had come to this restaurant before, and it was this second manager who had personally received them. Naturally, he recognized his mistress at a glance. At this moment, the second manager stared at Arbor with wide eyes and exclaimed in surprise, "Crown Princess!" It really was the Crown Princess. Head shopkeeper, come quickly. Head shopkeeper, look at who I saw. It's the Crown Princess. During this period of time, the Crown Princess had disappeared from the Mystic Beast Forest. The Crown Prince had mustered a large force and brought his hidden guards to search for the Crown Princess' whereabouts, so all of the Crown Prince's subordinates knew about this. No wonder the second manager was so happy. If this news was immediately reported, His Highness the Crown Prince would probably go crazy with joy. What? The Crown Princess? The head shopkeeper had been busy upstairs and hadn't come down. Now that he heard the second manager's ghostly cry, he hastily ran downstairs. Chapter 1150. The head shopkeeper ran downstairs to look at Arbor and was overjoyed at the sight. "Aya, Crown Princess, it's really the Crown Princess. Thank the heavens, this is great. Second brother, quick. Hurry up and report to His Highness." All right, we've finally found him." The head shopkeeper went forward, but before he could finish speaking, Dingyun coldly blocked Arbor's path. "Who are you?" The head shopkeeper was stunned. "I am the head shopkeeper of Morning Cloud Restaurant." "Hello, sir, did you save our Crown Princess?" Thank you so much. Crown Princess?" Dingyun snorted. "What the hell is this Crown Princess? We don't know you at all, please move aside." The second shopkeeper and 2 or 3 waiters rushed up, all talking at once. "Sir, how can you say that? This is our Crown Princess." Crown Princess, I am Ah Fu. You and His Highness came here a few days ago, and I even brought you tea and water, remember?" Yes. "Crown Princess, stop fooling around. His Highness has been sending people to look for you day and night. If you're in a bad mood and want to go missing occasionally, that's fine. You can tell His Highness first, and then you can go missing." The head shopkeeper craned his neck and looked impatiently at Arbor, then gave the second shopkeeper a look. The second shopkeeper immediately understood and hurried out, presumably to find Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yushio to pass on the message. What kind of words were these? Dingyun couldn't bring himself to smile. He saw this and felt slightly anxious. Damn it, so this Morning Cloud Restaurant was the Crown Prince's property. This was bad. Once the news reached the Crown Prince's ears, the little blockhead would be captured and brought back at any moment. That despicable Mo Lien, why wasn't he dead yet? Dingyun's handsome face was cold as he separated the head shopkeeper with one hand and grabbed Arbor's small hand with the other. "Let's go." "Wait, you can't leave." The head shopkeeper blocked the two and looked at Dingyun with an ugly expression. "You can leave, but the Crown Princess has to stay." "Littlewood, do you know them?" Dingyun's expression remained unchanged as he turned to ask Arbor. He knew that Arbor would not respond to anyone, including him. Sure enough, a certain little person's face was expressionless, and there was no reaction even after a while. "Crown Princess." The head shopkeeper was anxious. He scratched his head and ears and said, "I'm Old Sue. Please take a closer look. Haven't we met before?" Hey! What's going on? There's no need to look anymore. All of you, get out of the way. Don't come here to claim kinship. Ding Yun sneered. He grabbed Xiao Qiao's little hand and turned to walk out of the door. Wait, stop right there. With a cold face, the manager extended his hand to block Ding Yun's path again. Ding Yun flicked his sleeves angrily, and the manager took 3 steps back with a dong 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 sound. His face was gloomy and uncertain. So powerful. This young man's cultivation was actually so profound that he could push back a level 10 great mystic cultivator manager by 3 steps with a light flick of his sleeve. Inside Morning Cloud Restaurant, everyone was dead silent. The manager's expression was also very unsightly. He cupped his hands at Ding Yun and said, "Today, this Su's skills are inferior and I concede defeat. Sir, please leave your esteemed name." Beijing Manor. Ding Yun snorted. Ding Yun. So it's Beijing Manor's young master Ding. The manager's eyes flashed, and he cupped his fists and bowed. No matter what, young master Ding, please understand one thing. Chapter 1151. The head manager pointed at Arbor. This is the Eastern Palace's crown princess. Keeping her here will be of great benefit to you and your family. Ding Yun sneered. You want to keep me here with just the likes of you? Excuse me. With a wave of the head shopkeeper's hand, all of the waiters in Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed up with sharp gazes and surrounded Ding Yun, Xiao Mu, and Bao Yan. Bao Yan pointed at Xiao Mu in astonishment and asked, "Young master, is this really the crown prince consort?" "No, she doesn't know them at all," Ding Yun said indifferently. "This is a shady restaurant. Bao Yan, bring little blockhead back to the manor first. I'll deal with this." "Ah, how can this be? What if Madam finds out about this? Who would step foot into my courtyard normally? Hurry and take her away." Ding Yun glared at Bao Yan. "Are you not going to listen to me anymore?" "Yes, young master." Bao Yan lowered her eyes, aggrieved. "Simply a lunatic's ravings," the head manager said furiously. "All of you, attack. You must keep him here. Be careful not to hurt the crown princess." Just as the head manager finished speaking, he suddenly saw a plain-colored figure move. Pa! He kicked a small square table, directly flattening it. Darling Qiao turned her small face and rolled up her sleeves. Her figure moved and scratched the face of the waiter closest to her. "Head manager, Her Excellency Crown Princess, what are you doing? Can't you distinguish between friend and foe first?" Ding Yun grabbed her small hand and shoved her toward Bao Yan. "Let's go." Bao Yan pulled Arbor and suddenly struck out with 2 palms, dashing out of the door. Just as the head manager and the others were about to give chase, they saw Ding Yun suddenly float in the air and spread open his arms to release 2 powerful waves of mystic qi. Everyone screamed, "Ah," and fell out like rubber balls. The tables and chairs in front of him were all smashed into wooden splinters and scattered to the ground. Ding Yun did not linger in the battle after his attack succeeded. He quickly flipped out of the window and chased after the 2 figures in front of him. "Quick! Quick, stop them!" The shopkeeper spat out a mouthful of blood as he crawled up from the ground and yelled. "Quick, quick, quick! Stop them!" Ding Yun jumped out of the window and saw the group of people from Morning Cloud Restaurant chasing after him, unwilling to give up. He turned his head and waved his hand. Several wooden windows and doors nearby were all shattered, startling the pedestrians who were walking on the street. They screamed and covered their heads as they dodged. Ding Yun smiled and flew to Arbor's side in a few steps. He took a breath and flew forward with Arbor. The fleeing people raised their heads one after another and stared blankly at the 2 goddess-like beauties. The head shopkeeper and the others chased after them in a sorry state, but Arbor was nowhere to be seen. They were so angry that they stomped their feet and sighed. "Uncle Su, what should we do now?" Fu asked. "Is the second manager back yet?" Go and report again. Also, hurry and inform the dragon saliva guards to close the city gates and lock down the entire city. Search. The people from Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed out one after another. Some reported, and some were busy searching. All of them were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The head shopkeeper looked like he had nothing left to live for. Originally, finding the Crown Princess was an especially good thing, but now that if His Highness the Crown Prince were to find out that the person had escaped from their restaurant, he would definitely torture all of them to death. Chapter 1152. At this moment, a strange scene appeared on the streets of the capital. From the nobles and noble ladies to the commoners, peddlers and servants, they all stared blankly at the two beauties, one in front and one behind, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll in the courtyard. Arbor didn't notice their gazes at all. Even if she did, there wouldn't be any ripples in her heart. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Previously, because her vision had recovered, Arbor's attention had been diverted by a lot of fresh food. Now that she had finished eating and exited Morning Cloud Restaurant, the speed cultivation talisman once again shouted in her heart. Now, she should find an especially quiet environment to continue cultivating. Arbor raised her head and looked around, frowning a few times. The mystic energy here was very thin, and she somewhat disliked it. Lil, blockhead, let's return to the manor, okay? Dingyun followed behind her and asked cautiously. Arbor naturally wouldn't give him any response. Now that she had recovered her vision, everything else had not recovered. She couldn't hear, and she couldn't speak, so how was she supposed to answer? Dingyun smiled and said, if you don't object, I'll take it that you agree. In the future, you'll go wherever I go, and we'll never be separated, okay? Arbor replied with the back of her head. Bao Yen, who was at the side, glanced at Arbor with a sour taste in her heart, then said to Dingyun, young master, I think we should leave the city as soon as possible. That shopkeeper from earlier probably went to report, and any later, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave the city gates. Dingyun grunted in agreement. Just as he finished speaking, they heard a hoarse voice shout from the other end of the street, surround this entire street, no one is allowed to leave. Sir, what's going on? This old man has set up a small stall here, and I've been honest and dutiful. I haven't done a single bad thing. That's right, sir, we're all good citizens. Seeing the soldiers coming over in an aggressive manner, a few of the peddlers were shocked and quickly greeted the leading officer with an obsequious smile. The imperial court is searching for the criminal who kidnapped the crown princess. It's just a routine matter, and it's none of your business. Move aside, go home if you need to. Everyone obediently retreated to the side of the street. Search carefully. Don't let anyone go. The leader of the officers shouted angrily. Dingyun cast a glance at the other end of the long street, only to see several hundred soldiers under the lead of a dark-faced man, interrogating the pedestrians one by one. Dingyun frowned and grabbed Arbor's little hand. Little blockhead, let's go. Bao Yen clenched her fists, knowing that the situation was not good. Could it be that his young master was so daring as to kidnap someone else's crown princess? As the three of them moved quickly, the dark-faced man glanced at their departing figures and hurriedly shouted, "Stop right there." Dingyun pulled Arbor and ran faster and faster. The dark-faced man quickly caught up and angrily shouted, "Stop." Dingyun turned his head and glared at him. "Who are you calling to stop?" "I'm calling you." The black-faced man was none other than the deputy commander of the Imperial Army, He Tian. At the same time, Hui Feng leaped in from the study's window. Holding the information in his hand, he excitedly reported, "Your Highness, our men have found the crown princess." "Where?" Mo Lien abruptly stood up. Mo Lien wasn't the only one inside the small study. Duan Yu and Situ Yi, who were sitting across from each other, were also surprised. "Where is little junior sister?" "She's at Morning Cloud Restaurant on Hualing Street." As soon as he finished speaking, His Highness the Crown Prince's figure swiftly brushed past him and flew out. Chapter 1153. When Tian received the news, he happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he was naturally one step ahead of Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu. After Morning Cloud Restaurant sent out the news, there was no need for the Crown Prince to give the order. Once they received news that the Crown Princess was in the capital, be it the Hidden Night Pavilion, Dragon Saliva Guard, or Imperial Guard, they immediately split up and began to search the city. If the Crown Prince Consort was still able to escape from under their noses like this, then who knew what His Highness the Crown Prince would do to these pitiful people? Tian happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he immediately rushed over to Morning Cloud Restaurant after receiving the secret report. They began their search from the restaurant, and indeed, they soon saw Ding Yun pulling the Crown Princess and planning to leave quietly. He immediately stopped them. "What right do you have to tell me to stop?" Ding Yun sneered. Tian was furious. "Good lad, it's you, isn't it? The Ding Yun who injured innkeeper Su. I advise you not to act recklessly. Quickly release our Crown Prince Consort and allow yourself to be captured." As he spoke, a group of soldiers had already rushed over and surrounded Ding Yun and Arbor. The crowd dispersed in all directions, afraid that they would accidentally injure themselves in a fight. "Just with your motley crew? You want to keep me, Ding Yun, here?" He sneered. "What arrogance! All of you, get out of the way. I'll deal with this little brat." Tian pulled out the steel sword at his waist and waved it, sending a gust of wind toward Ding Yun. Ding Yun guffawed, and his eyes narrowed as he coldly uttered, "Just in time." He lightly pushed Xiao Mu aside before grabbing a soldier beside him to swiftly block the attack. That soldier felt the wind from the sword was biting cold. If Tian hadn't withdrawn his aura, half of his head would have been cut off. Even so, the soldier broke out in a cold sweat. He raised his hand to touch his head and found that a large chunk of his hair had been shaved off, leaving his forehead completely bald. Ding Yun laughed heartily as he snatched the spear from the soldier's hand and tossed him aside. The soldier was thrown onto the table at the side and rolled onto the ground. He cried out in pain and was helped up by his companions. Tian saw that he was so crafty and strange, toying with his soldiers the moment he made a move, and his expression could not help but become furious. In the blink of an eye, Tian's second and third strikes carried the unique strength of a level 11 body cultivator and arrived in front of Ding Yun. Ding Yun raised his spear to block the attack, his eyes filled with ridicule as he praised, "Good saber technique." Tian's saber focused on speed. Seeing Ding Yun easily block two of his moves while talking, he couldn't help but secretly admired this young man's cultivation. He was a rough man. If he could win, then he could win. If he couldn't, then he couldn't. There was nothing to be unconvinced about. Right now, his skills were inferior, but he could not retreat even half a step. The most important thing right now was to rescue the Crown Princess. No matter how bad it was, he had to keep them here and wait for the Crown Prince to arrive. He didn't know what was wrong with the Crown Princess. Her gaze was cold as she looked in their direction, as if she didn't even recognize him. She didn't know if this brat had done something to her to make her look like an idiot. In the blink of an eye, Tian had already exchanged over 100 moves with Ding Yun and was forced to retreat. Tian couldn't help but feel frustrated. He didn't expect this Ding brat to have such a profound cultivation despite his young age. If this continued, he was afraid that he would lose to him due to lack of strength. Chapter 1154. Ding Yun's lips curled into a sneer as he mercilessly grabbed at his shoulder. This claw seemed to have the intention of breaking Tian's shoulder blade. He didn't feel like teasing these small fries anymore. In reality, many thoughts had also flashed through Ding Yun's mind. At this moment, he was a bit regretful. He regretted wandering around the Mo Kingdom capital. If he had brought this darling back to the headquarters earlier, it wouldn't have attracted so much trouble. He had been too confident. Although these small fries weren't his match, he was afraid that if they fought for a long time, they would attract even more enemies. At that time, it would be hard to guarantee victory. His lil blockhead didn't recognize anyone right now. That was perfect. In his heart, he really didn't want her to recover her memory. Once she returned to normal, he wouldn't be treated well by her. Perhaps she would attack him mercilessly like that night by the river. When he thought of this, his heart felt like it was being wrenched by something, making him extremely uncomfortable. A long howl came from the other end of the street. He Tian suddenly jumped up and followed up with a howl. Ding Yun's heart trembled, knowing that the dark-faced man's companions had rushed over. In a hurry, a trace of mystic energy floated up from his hands, suppressing the spears in the soldiers' hands. In the blink of an eye, he had them all turn around and point their spears at He Tian. Those soldiers cried out "Io," their hands stabbing their spears at He Tian uncontrollably. He Tian was greatly alarmed. His steel saber chopped off the spearheads with a few swishes, and he shouted, "Steady yourselves! Retreat, retreat!" Ding Yun took advantage of the chaos to grab Arbor's small hand, pulling her along as he ran towards the city gates. With a flick of his sleeve, several passers-by were all pushed to the ground by the mystic energy he released. The rolling passers-by sprawled on the ground, crying out in alarm. He Tian led everyone in pursuit and nearly stepped on those passers-by, so he hastily avoided them. Arbor still didn't know what happened, so she expressionlessly turned to glance at He Tian and the others. "Crown Princess!" He Tian angrily cursed, "Motherfucker," and chased over with flying steps while holding his steel saber. He rebuked, "Stinking brat, you better hurry and stop. What kind of sorcery did you use on our crown princess? She can't even recognize me." Ding Yun ignored him and pulled Arbor along as he ran. However, he had only taken a few steps when he heard the sound of clothes fluttering behind him. 3 figures just happened to land around them, blocking Ding Yun's path in a triangular formation. He Tian shouted, "Your Highness," and rushed over with his blade. Ding Yun focused his gaze and saw that it was Prince Mo, Duan Yu, and Situ Yi. When Ding Yun saw Crown Prince Mo, he was visibly startled. Why did he look so safe and sound? Wasn't he poisoned by devil grass, an extremely potent neurotoxin? In a short period of time, the nerves would be paralyzed, which would then affect the limbs and body. He would gradually become a paralyzed person. But now, this man was actually unharmed. Ding Yun's pupils constricted slightly as a trace of discomfort slid through his heart. Why was the devil grass ineffective on this man? Prince Mo narrowed his phoenix eyes and coldly said, "Return the baby to me and you can scram." Ding Yun reflexively grasped Arbor's small hand and pretended to be a complete stranger. He glared at them and shouted, "Who are you people? Why are you obstructing our path time and time again? Withdraw." A trace of fury flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. He glanced at the unresponsive Arbor with unconcealable jealousy and hatred in his heart. Chapter 1155. With a swish, her sword pierced towards Ding Yun's heart at an extremely fast speed. This stab was ruthless and accurate, and it came so quickly. However, Ding Yun gathered his energy and flipped in midair, grabbing Arbor as he retreated 3 steps. Duan Yu exclaimed with a smile before nodding and praising, "Your martial arts aren't bad. Unfortunately, you're about to become a dead man." Ding Yun snorted. "You're talking about yourself, right? You still dare to hold on to me and not let go?" Mo Lien was enraged, and Raven Moon abruptly appeared in her palm. A vicious aura streaked across the air, aiming for Ding Yun's eyes. "Your Highness, please wait." Situ Yi quickly flew in front of him and blocked his sword. He acted like a peacemaker as he said, "It won't be too late to make a move after we've made things clear. Little junior sister. Why are you so naughty? Why didn't you inform us when you returned to the royal capital? Do you know that in order to find you, His Highness the Crown Prince has spent a lot of effort?" Xiaoshi. Situ paused in the middle of his words because he realized that his junior sister's eyes had not even glanced in his direction. This little fellow was looking around for who knew what. She really was blind to not look in their direction when the three peerlessly handsome men were standing in front of her. She could still absent-mindedly look around like this. Look my ass. Jojo, Jojo. Duan Yu also noticed that Arbor's expression was a bit off, so he couldn't resist calling out to her. Arbor's small face was stoic as she searched her surroundings, causing them to also turn their heads to see what she was looking at. When Arbor's gaze landed on the three of them, an extremely icy and detached face happened to be facing them. Her gaze didn't move at all, and her expression didn't change at all. It was as if she was looking at three strangers. Mo Lian's heart contracted. Her heart was about to shatter when she saw this terrifying and icy gaze. Duan Yu's eyes also widened in shock. Jojo, Jojo, what's wrong? Why don't you recognize us? We didn't recognize each other in the first place. Why pretend like you know each other? Ding Yun said with a cold laugh. There's nothing to say. It was him. After capturing our Chow Chow, I don't know what they fed her, but now she looks like an idiot. Even now, he still dares to refuse to let go. Let me kill him first. Duan Yu's beautiful peach blossom eyes were tainted with a layer of fury, and he tilted his body to throw a yearning nail at Ding Yun's throat. Brother Duan Yu, calm down. Although Situ Yi was also anxious, he was the calmest among them and wouldn't let the matter before him get to his head. Hence, he hastily pressed down on Duan Yu and turned to say to Ding Yun, this humble one is Heavenly Tao Sect Situ Yi. Brother must be Beijing Manor's young master, Ding Yun. That's right. Ding Yun stared at him. Who are you? Why are you blocking our path again and again? Bao Yan nervously clenched her fists as she stood on the side. When Prince Imo and the others appeared, her heart started pounding madly like a drum. She was on tenterhooks for her young master's safety. She could tell that the young master's strength was slightly inferior to His Highness the Crown Prince's. If the three people before her joined forces, the young master absolutely wouldn't be able to escape alive. It was all this fool's fault. It was all her fault for causing this disaster. Bao Yan resentfully looked at Arbor, who was standing next to the young master. Arbor was expressionless and even somewhat absent-minded. Chapter 1156. Her gaze kept wandering around, searching for a place with enough mystic energy for her to cultivate. He noticed that her gaze never rested on him for even a moment from beginning to end. Prince Imo was truly anxious, infuriated, and in unbearable heartache. What was going on? What exactly happened inside the mystic beast forest secret realm? Why did his darling act like she didn't know him at all? Mo Lian only felt a heart-wrenching fury gushing out. That fury instantly scuttled up from the depths of her heart, and she urgently needed to find an outlet to vent. Stop pretending. Don't you know the reason why we stopped you? Tell us, what exactly do you want for Jojo to be released? Mo Lian demanded while glaring at Ding Yun. Jojo? Ding Yun pretended to look down at the little lady whose gaze was wandering everywhere. You're talking about her? Nonsense. Duan Yu harumphed. You punk, quickly return Jojo if you know what's good for you. Otherwise, don't blame us for attacking you. She's not the Jojo you're talking about. Ding Yun looked like he was lying through his teeth, but his expression was extremely serious. Look, she doesn't know you guys at all. She says she's called Lilith Blockhead, and she's my. Why are you still arguing with him? Why don't you kill him and snatch Jojo back? Duan Yu jumped up and shouted, why aren't you attacking? Fight! Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, led a group of Dragon Saliva Guard disciples over. Before he could speak, the four people were about to fight. Situ Yi glanced at them in astonishment and asked hesitantly, are we attacking together? Duh! This isn't too good, right? Situ Yi hesitated. What's not good about it? Now isn't the time to talk about righteousness in the pugilistic world. Attack together and kill this guy. Then all the problems will be solved. Duan Yu made the final decision. For the first time, Prince Mo felt that Duan Yu was quite quick-witted. He was right. Everything would be settled after killing him. Duan Yu and Prince Mo flew forward one after another, and Raven Moon and Raven Bone Fan simultaneously swung at Ding Yun. What a lousy idea. Situ Yi sighed inwardly. In fact, he wanted to ask young Master Ding what was going on with his junior sister. Perhaps this young Master Ding had accidentally picked up his junior sister and brought her with him all the way. What if this young Master Ding was junior sister's benefactor? It was a little unreasonable for him to suddenly attack young Master Ding. The strangest thing was that little junior sister didn't even have the slightest reaction when she saw them. In the past, whenever she saw him, even if her face was stoic, she would still cutely call him senior brother Situ. Prince Mo and Duan Yu attacked Ding Yun without another word. After a moment of hesitation, Situ Yi also pounced forward, unsheathing the long sword at his waist. 3 bursts of vigorous dark force simultaneously crashed into young Master Ding's chest, back, and long legs. Ding Yun's heart couldn't help but tremble. He had previously used the identity of Thief Sage Ding Ting to fight with Prince Mo, and he knew that he was no match for him. If he hadn't schemed against him at that time, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape. Now that Duan Yu and Situ Yi were added to the mix, it became increasingly difficult. He felt like every strike from the trio wanted his life. After blocking Duan Yu's palm strike with great difficulty, Mo Lien and Situ Yi's swords stabbed toward his chest as fast as lightning. Amidst the chaos, Ding Yun's gaze focused, and he turned to smile at Duan Yu. Chapter 1157. Laugh my ass. Duan Yu was about to scold him when the other party opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous mist. After Duan Yu dodged to the side, he almost bumped into the sword that Situ Yi handed over. This made Situ Yi so angry that he jumped in fright and quickly shouted, "Brother Duan Yu, what the hell are you doing? There's something wrong with this punk." Duan Yu quickly shouted, "He's a superhuman." Mo Lien looked at Ding Yun pensively. She didn't say anything and just brandished her long sword, forcing Ding Yun to retreat in a fluster. Yu Xiu suddenly called out, "Crown Prince Consort." Arbor's gaze didn't land on those people. In reality, she had already sensed the location with the densest mystic energy in the entire royal capital. Compared to the mystic energy inside the Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm, the mystic energy here was clearly much thinner. But it was better than nothing, right? Arbor locked onto her target and flew up to the roof in a flash, directly leaving the group of men staring at each other on the street behind. She ran off first by herself. Little junior sister. Situ Yi couldn't resist shouting when he returned to his senses. Fuck. They were fighting enthusiastically over there, but little junior sister didn't care at all and abandoned them to run off first. How could Arbor hear that? After a few leaps, the little one disappeared from everyone's sight. Duan Yu was a bit dumbfounded, but his movements weren't slow as he reflexively blocked Ding Yun's path. During this one breath's time, Mo Lien abandoned everyone and quickly chased after Arbor's fleeing figure. Darling Qiao's disappearance only took a few seconds, so Mo Lien was also fast enough to catch up. Not long after, she saw that nimble little fellow running towards the mountain behind Honghai Temple on all fours. Behind Fu Mountain was Zhuzi Lake. Why was the little fellow running there? Our dear Arbor's mind was restless at this moment. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. It felt pretty good as expected. The closer she got to Fu Mountain, the denser the mystic energy felt. Compared to the thin mystic energy in the entire capital, the mystic energy in the mountain behind Fu Mountain was much denser. When Arbor reached the mountain behind Fu Mountain, a jade-green lake appeared before her eyes. The jade-green water was as serene as a mirror. To the lake rippled as sunlight seeped into it. Xiaomu jumped onto a large rock by the lakeside and casually combed her long hair that had been messed up by the wind with a slight movement of her fingers. The water ripples lightly, the water, ripples a fish's tail after tail, to the side to the water to the back of the lake. The lake water reflected a small face that was as white as jade. Her unperturbed gaze landed on the lake's surface as she concentrated on the water. Her brows furrowed with a hint of coldness, as if she could freeze the lake's jade-green ripples. Arbor pursed her beady lips and slowly raised her fair and tender breasts. She gently stroked the ripples on the lake's surface before suddenly leaping into the water with a splash. She emerged from the water with a slender fish and spat out a mouthful of bubbles. A defensive barrier naturally covered her body, and she closed her eyes to rapidly absorb the dense mystic energy around the lake. The little fellow was only following her instincts and intuition when doing these actions, so her face was as expressionless as a wooden sculpture. As if she was going to carry out a sacred mission, her small face was stoic, and her entire body emitted a steady and calm aura. Chapter 1158. Arbor merely followed her instincts and skillfully entered a cultivation state. Mo Lien's chilly aura enveloped this lake. When he saw the little fellow's current state, he didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. How come he never knew that the first thing this mischievous little thing did after returning to the Mo Kingdom capital was to run to Zhuzi Lake behind Fu Mountain to cultivate? Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Xiaomu did not know that Crown Prince Mo was staring fixedly at her beside her, gazing at her in a daze. She immersed herself in cultivation for 2 days and 3 nights without any activity. Mo Lien kept watch over her the entire time, watching over this vexing little thing. On the other side, after Ding Yun lost Arbor, he was chased out of the city gate by Duan Yu, Yu Xiu, and the others. Situ Yi originally wanted to stop them after following them out of the city gate, but Yu Xiu and the others simply didn't give Ding Yun a chance to speak. After exiting the Mo Kingdom capital, the group chased Cult Master Ding all the way to Gale Forest and completely surrounded him. The atmosphere froze for a moment. Bao Yan quickly exclaimed, "Young master, leave first." "Why should I leave?" Ding Yun sneered. His slender figure suddenly streaked across the sky as he sent a wave of mystic energy at Duan Yu and the others. Duan Yu met him with narrowed eyes, and the two exchanged over 100 blows. As they fought, the sound of wind mixed with the clanging of swords rang out incessantly. "Brother Duan Yu! Young Master Ding! Can the two of you slow down and listen to what I have to say first?" Situ Yi twitched his mouth and hastily called out. In the open space in front of the forest, dense mystic energy transformed into balls of white light that exploded. Duan Yu and Ding Yun abruptly separated from each other upon contact. The Dragon Saliva Guard soldiers at the front of the formation couldn't dodge in time and were all injured by the mystic energy, tumbling backwards with a plop. Yu Xiu's face darkened, and he was about to charge forward with his sword when Duan Yu reached out to stop him. Bao Yan gritted her teeth and steeled her heart. Suddenly, she leaped onto a tree. After closing her eyes, a few drops of sweat slowly seeped out of her small face. When she opened her eyes again, Bao Yan put her little hand to her lips and cried out a few times. Suddenly, furry faces slowly emerged from behind the trees in the forest. Swaying their long tails, a dozen or so vicious wolves bared their sharp teeth at Duan Yu's group. Duan Yu raised a brow. Interesting. The little maid beside Ding Yun was actually a person with special abilities. Bao Yan used her telekinesis to summon the wolves nearby. With the range of her special ability, she could only summon more than 10 wolves. Even so, it was still quite impressive. It must be known that the pack of wolves that Bao Yan had summoned were not ordinary wolves. Most of them were Xian beasts of the 5th level and above. It was slightly troublesome to deal with them. After exhausting her psychokinesis, Bao Yan barely propped up her limp body and slid down. With her back against the tree, she stared unblinkingly at Duan Yu's group. He let out a soft reprimand. The large wolf in the lead suddenly pounced ferociously in Duan Yu's direction. Duan Yu sneered and instinctively shook the raven bone fan in his hand. He dodged the vicious wolf's pounce with a crouch and turned around to leap onto the wolf's back at lightning speed. With a flash of silver light, Duanyu gently closed the raven bone fan in his hand. With a forceful fling of his raised wrist, the raven bone fan abruptly transformed into a long sword. The sharp blade reversed and directly stabbed into the large wolf's head. Duanyu's lips curled into a sneer. Chapter 1159. That dumb wolf only had time to whimper twice before collapsing heavily on the ground, dead. Immediately afterward, two more vicious wolves pounced forward, but their necks were slit by the long sword. The pack of wolves whimpered and didn't dare to act rashly. Bao Yan bit her lips and shouted angrily, "Hurry and go." Duanyu put away his long sword and silently stood under the tree, his lips curling into a sardonic smile. Suddenly, he flung his sleeve, and a round, sparkling emerald pearl suddenly leaped into the air. Duanyu took out a small object that resembled an emerald green bamboo tube from his waist. He opened the back cover and instantly sucked the emerald pearl inside. He abruptly twisted the lid and lightly pressed it, causing a green light to explode instantly. A ray of light shot out and landed at the feet of the pack of wolves. With a loud boom, large patches of flames immediately erupted. Duanyu looked at the flames that kept rippling in front of him. When he saw that the vicious wolves were all engulfed by the flames, he blinked and murmured with a chuckle, "Jade Heavenly Thunder, not bad at all." This new type of firearm's power could surpass the core ravaging thunder, and its range was also much further. Dingyun flipped twice in the air while dragging Bao Yan along. His sleeves were stained by the green flames, and a series of small holes were burned into them. Cult Master Ding was fine, but Bao Yan was a bit miserable. She was already a bit weak after using her special power, and now that she was burned by the soaring flames, her arms and legs were in pain from the burns. Her body went limp, and she fell to the ground. "Let's go." Dingyun grabbed Bao Yan and gave her a push before escaping into the forest with her with an unsightly expression. Yu Xiu was about to give chase with his men when Duanyu stopped him. "Don't chase." Situ-Yi sighed in relief and said, "I feel that this matter is quite strange. I wonder how little junior sister is doing." A hint of worry flashed through Duanyu's eyes. "Let's go back and take a look." My Chao's division, after 2 days and 3 nights, Arbor opened her eyes. Her cultivation had already advanced from phenomenal success to the pinnacle of level 13 mystic cultivation. In addition, not only did her strength increase by a minor realm, her eyes moved slightly, as if her sense of hearing and taste had also recovered. Arbor raised her eyebrows. She didn't know why, but she felt a little excited. It seemed that something important was about to come back. The little fellow squatted inside the defensive shield and swayed a few times with the flow of water. Suddenly, she saw a moon-white figure swimming quickly towards her. Immediately after, a faint medicinal fragrance wrapped around her. Her lips were gently opened by the tip of someone's tongue, and an endless medicinal fragrance followed. Arbor's eyes were wide open. He didn't understand what was going on. The surrounding scenery was very detailed. Even the schools of fish that were swimming around could be seen clearly, and the colorful spots on their bodies could be seen clearly. But now was not the time to study fish. Under normal circumstances, Arbor should have pushed the person in front of him away and kicked him hard with his little foot. But for some reason, he couldn't bear to do it. His fist had already reached the back of that person's head, but he still stopped. Cough, 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 cough. The little fellow actually couldn't hold her breath and nearly choked on her own saliva. She couldn't resist stretching out her little paws to push him away, but she suddenly realized that his slender fingers were tightly gripping her waist. Her entire body was wrapped in his embrace, and her small hands and feet were suppressed. She was practically unable to move. Chapter 1160. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed his soft lips against hers. This kiss was so long that it seemed like it would last until the end of time. He held on to her and never let go, searching her mouth to his heart's content. Arbor opened her eyes wide and glared at him. No matter how much Mo Lien closed his eyes and pressed down on her to kiss her, after a long while, he finally couldn't help but bring her to the surface of the water. Because this little fellow kept glaring at him. Although she didn't make a sound, that strange little expression on her face made him feel stifled. She actually wasn't intoxicated at all. To think that he had already sunk into it. How infuriating. A certain baby who had lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires only knew that this strange big brother kept nibbling on her. There weren't any ripples in her heart. Splash, with a soft sound, Arbor was lifted out of the water with both hands. She kicked her leg and reached out to press down on the rock on her right, flipping over and sitting on it. This time, she saw it clearly. On the sparkling green water surface, there was a man in white with long hair and a few droplets of water on his handsome face. His black, satin-like hair was soaked in the lake water, sticking to his straight back. His phoenix eyes were filled with a faint light as he stared straight at her, as if he wanted to see through her to the depths of her heart. Just like that, he stared at her in a daze. After a long while, he finally let out a long sigh. Unexpectedly, Xiao Mu also followed suit and sighed. She blinked her eyes and coughed lightly. Then, she raised her hand to touch her throat and realized that she could actually speak. "Jojo, are you pretending that you don't know me?" The water rippled gently, and this beauty swayed to the side of the big rock, half lying there and looking at her. Darling Qiao blinked and suddenly said, "Who are you?" Mo Lien tightly pursed his thin lips. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled her into the water again. He was overwhelmed by rage and grief, and he cupped her small face in his hands. Without another word, he bit down on her small mouth and nibbled on it rudely. "Who am I? Who do you think I am? Tell me." Boom! Arbor tried to restrain himself again and again, but in the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He stretched out a small fist and punched the back of Mo Lien's head. "What are you doing?" Xiao Mu shouted as she forcefully pushed away his drenched body and wiped her small mouth in passing. Mo Lien. Why did he feel that the little thing in front of him was inexplicably cute? "I'm your husband." His heart skipped a beat, and he reached out to hug her. However, she raised her small hand and slapped his hand away rudely. It was already the 12th day since the disaster-courting talisman had taken effect. Arbor's 5 senses and consciousness were slowly recovering. However, the only goal in his heart would never change. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Where are we going? Seeing that the little fellow was about to jump into the water again, Mo Lien quickly pulled her into his embrace and forcefully held her hands down. A trace of anger flashed across his almond-shaped eyes. "Don't move." With this soft and moist body in his arms, how much willpower did he have to use to restrain himself? This little fellow actually dared to move around to provoke him. Wasn't she worried that he would do her on the spot? Arbor slightly tilted her little head and met his pair of beautiful black eyes. Her little eyes flickered. Suddenly, a loud drumming sound came from his abdomen. Mo Lien lowered his head and reached out to touch her shriveled little stomach. A trace of heartache flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1161. He didn't know what had happened to this little thing recently. Did she not take good care of herself these past few days? He kept feeling that she had lost quite a bit of weight. That originally round place seemed to have also become thinner. AI. His heart felt so bad. He had taken great pains to raise her until she was a little rounder, but after a few days, she had returned to her original state. Sigh. Xiao Mu also sighed along with him, looking very comical. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes revealed traces of a smile. "I am your husband." He moved closer to her ear and whispered in a low voice, "I am your husband, baby." He repeated it several times, his breath lingering in her ear. Although she had not recovered her sense of touch and could not feel him close to her, she still felt that it was very strange. This man was really quite good-looking. His head of waterfall-like black hair that hung down to the lake's surface was gently parted by the wind. At this time, he was holding the little fellow and sitting with her on that large rock. He lowered his head and stared at her with those pure black phoenix eyes without blinking, as if he wanted to carve her into the depths of his bones and never let her go. The deep affection engraved in those eyes, even if the little fellow was someone who had lost her love and didn't feel anything at the moment, she could almost feel that something was wrong. It was too strong. Arbor reached out her little hand and pushed Emo Lien's handsome face away. The lake breeze gently blew through his jade-white robe and his jade belt slightly fluttered in the wind. It was the same feeling he gave her at this moment, very ethereal and pure. What a strange man. Husband? She blinked her eyes. That silly little appearance fell into Emo Lien's eyes and was especially cute. Yes, husband. Arbor moved her little legs and thought in distress. This person had clearly been hindering her cultivation, but why couldn't she do anything to him? Logically speaking, anyone who hindered her cultivation should be erased, but Miss Chow didn't want to do anything to this person in front of her. Maybe it was because he was handsome. A golden drumstick that was roasted until it was glossy with oil suddenly waved in front of Arbor. Arbor blinked again and again. For a moment, she thought it was an illusion, so she reached out and pinched his jade-like cheek. Does it hurt? Darling Chow asked. Hiss. What a strong hand. Emo Lien creased his good-looking brows and nodded honestly. Only then did Arbor snatch the drumstick and take a bite, wiping his oily little hands on his moon-white robe sleeve. Emo Lien chuckled, lowered his head and hugged her waist. He leaned over and kissed her white and tender little face, thinking to himself, no matter how his JoJo has changed, it's still his. Even if she didn't remember him for the time being, it didn't matter as long as she remembered him again. Moreover, Emo Lien suspected that the reason why JoJo had become like this was probably related to Dingyun from Beijing Manor. Did Dingyun give her some kind of medicine? It must be. Looking at that guy's wretched appearance, he must have fed his baby some medicine and then tried to force his baby to stay by his side. Yes, that's right. This must be the truth. No matter how quick-witted Emo Lien was, he probably wouldn't have thought of it. The reason why Arbor, this little fellow, became like this was all because of the disaster-courting talisman that she drew herself. Arbor finished eating the drumstick and wiped her oily little hands on his clean robe. Only then did she move her arms and legs, wanting to get out of his embrace and go into the water to continue cultivating. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.